But
okay, let's get some damn chess.
But it's all right. I understand.
I appreciate you coming by, and
Shine
best of luck on your journey. You know, I think it sounds to me like you're just trying to
Street
figure
whore.
out what's true and what you believe, and I think all of us are doing that for like literally ever. So I appreciate you coming through.
Come on, slant-eyed slut from China.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it, man. Have a good one.
Cheers, man.
He sucked my goddamn holy god motherfucking dick, god fucking damn it.
All right.
Street whore. The goddamn Holy Ghost fuck.
All right. Sorry about the echo. The echo probably should be gone now. So I think that was just his bad connection. This is our first live stream back on TikTok.
Come on, you slant-eyed slut. Start the damn game, you slut.
Banned. Not only was I on vacation for a while, but
suck my slut.
My account was banned for a while. I think the last 2 or 3 TikTok streams was on my backup account. So it might be kind of a small TikTok audience. I don't know if I'm going to get any TikTok guests. If you're watching on TikTok and you want to guest up, just hit the guest request box. I'll get you into the conversation. If not, we'll get you in on YouTube using the method provided on the screen.
Stupid!
On TikTok, I appreciate that. Also, in the description of the video on YouTube, you'll find a link that will allow you to join the conversation as well.
Stupid idiot! Stupid idiot!
Great Doug. Hey, thank you so much, Snowball. I appreciate that. And I hope you enjoy some
move, whore.
And Simeon says, congrats on officially being onboarded to the line as a host. Well, I guess the secret's out there. I love watching you here, and I can't wait to see you more there.
Stupid!
I already put the word out. I am going to be a regular host on the line, just like I am on the Atheist Experience. So be looking for me on the line. Of course, when I host, I'll let people know that I'm hosting over there. Meg, my friend, great to see you. As long as 2 weeks ever, had to listen to repeat cooking episodes.
I'm sorry.
We're back and we're cooking.
Dumbass.
He sent out 5 DZ debate gifted memberships. I appreciate that, A, who the left. It's great to see you. Also, LP, my friend, thank you so much for the $50 super chat. That is huge. Glad you got that vacay out of your system. So, no more vacations until the Andromeda Galaxy pays us a visit, right? Maybe. I'll pray about it. Hope you had fun, and looking forward to hearing more. Welcome back. And I'm going to be introducing a new topic this week as well. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Thank you so much, Elpine. I really appreciate the $50 super chat. And also a $49.99 super chat from our friend Maximilian. Great to see you, friend, and thank you so much for the generous super chat. Since we missed you, buddy. But hope you had a fabulous vacation. We're hungry. Start cooking. Rock hard for that. Well, yeah. We're going to do everything we can, Maximilian. We've got the live stream open. We're rocking and rolling now, and Goddess of Rebels, thank you for the $20 super chat. Why is it so hard to solve a redneck murder? The DNA all matches no dental records. Listen, I've been chastised a little bit for making fun of rednecks, but listen, half my family is from the holler. And when I say holler, I mean this is a real problem in my genetics. So, big W on the joke, I do appreciate that. I have the genetics, I can make fun of it. And Solar says the Earth is perfect for life, so God. Oh, yeah, here we go. Look at the trees, right? People need to do research. There have been lots of mass extinction events, and humanity almost went extinct 100,000 years ago. Yeah, actually, that's a really good point, because, like, if the Earth is tuned for life, it's weird that, like, we're constantly on the edge of being wiped out. And last one from our friend Nico. Good to see you, my friend. Since looking back, I'm glad I came.
Stupid!
As Groucho might sing. To my bed.
Cause that was stupid.
Catching up tomorrow. I hope you enjoyed your holiday.
Stupid. The stupid machine.
Don't let my voice keep you from getting the rest. Rest is one of the most important things you can do for your body. All right, let's get our next guest is going to be Witty Noggins into The discussion. How you doing, Whitty?
Hey, doing good, man.
Doing good. Thank you for asking. Whitty, are you at least 18 and do you believe in some kind of a god?
34.
You fucking dumb.
Cool. What would be the most compelling evidence or argument for the Christian God being real?
I bet you got that 1163 rating by a fluke. There's no way you can be that damn stupid.
Hold on, people are saying that there's an echo again. Let me see. What's going on here? Why would there be an echo?
God, that goddamn night's really starting to fucking piss me off. God,
because you're like flying through space right now. I don't know.
Alright, one second. I apologize for that. I think I know what the problem is.
Yeah, I don't hear an echo through this window.
Yeah, I think it should be good now. I had two audio sources running at the same time by accident. We should be good to go now. Everyone let me know if the echo is fixed. It's going to take about 23 seconds for the chat to catch up, though. I apologize. There's like a 23 to 25 second delay on the latency for the feed. Alright, should be good now. That's my fault, friends. I apologize. I had an extra audio source turned on that I forgot to turn off before I started the stream. That's my bad. Alright, Whitty Noggins, we're back at it again. So Whitty, where did we leave off?
Why I believe what I believe.
Right, yeah. So you're a Christian, and so what would be like what's the thing that convinces you that Christianity is true, and should it convince me?
Well, for example, let's say that the biblical narrative is true, right? You got God and you got an adversary, Satan. Okay. There's a lot of different routes I could go with this, but just for me personally, it seems obvious there was something with Jesus, right? He had
suck my dick, bitch.
Well, he had like a 3-year ministry where he performed miracles. He claimed to be. He made claims to be, timeless and divine.
Why is any of that special? Like, there's lots of miracle workers from the time period.
Sure. But he's the only one that claimed that he gave everlasting life, and
he never did it. That's the problem. Right? Making the claim is useless unless you do it.
I fucked his home. Well, either he was having a bad day or he's just a plain dumbass.
Yeah. What do you think
watch me lose to
demonstrate that he's going to give people everlasting life? Because I don't see
that shit always happens. I kick the ass of
that's not
1100, 1200 rating. I get my ass kicked
Why would I
out
believe
of
that
fucking
Jesus is
900.
giving other human beings
Fucking
everlasting life
900
when people are still dying?
Suck
The
my
same rate they always
slut.
have.
Well, he doesn't mean everlasting life as in you won't ever age
Suck my dick.
and depart from this earth. He means everlasting life in eternity,
Suck my
right?
fucking dick.
Right, but what's the evidence of that truthfulness? Like making the claim is
He's just telling you what he claims, right? So I think it's different than the other religions, whereas the other religions.
But Whitty, just pay attention. No one's asking what's unique about Christianity. I'm asking what makes it true.
Yeah, well, what makes Christianity true?
Kiss that night goodbye, slut from China!
I'm sure you're aware of like Dr. Kirk's, arguments for God. His like
Dumbass.
His 5 arguments, like the cosmological, fine-tuning, moral objective.
Cunt.
Are you gonna run one of the arguments, or?
Woo!
Yeah, because basically God's the best explanation of the origin of the universe. He's the best explanation for the fine-tuning for intelligence.
I feel so goddamn shit-sucking black ass for Stalin. I ain't talking Joseph Stalin neither. I ain't talking Joseph Stalin either. I'm talking about Stalin.
Which seems to be in line with science and logic.
Eternal universe? Okay. But logically, I don't think...
Suck my slut!
Because the observable universe is finite capacity, if I'm not mistaken, right? The unobservable universe...
Why would I believe that the unobservable... or that the observable universe once didn't exist?
Suck my dick, bitch.
Once the observable universe is expanding,
I agree.
And so...
You suck my
If it's
dick.
expanding, and you put that in reverse, if if it's contracting infinitely, then that seems like a contradiction or a fallacy.
didn't say Earth doing that infinitely, so I'm not sure where you got that from. Why would I believe that?
I think
if you throw a rock into a pond, the ripples come out from the center point, right? Yeah, and then if you reverse that, the ripples all go back into the center, right?
Suck my dick, bitch.
They
Did the pond not exist before the ripples came out?
Well, sure, but I don't know if that analogy
It's a great analogy because you don't have a good argument to demonstrate that before the expansion of the universe there was nothing. The reality is there's 100 other configurations the universe could have been in before the current expansion. It could be an endless cycle. Back in like the early 2000s, I think they used to refer to it as rebound theory. Or cyclical universe. I think now the common terminology is Big Bang, Big Crunch, but I fail to see why this is not a more viable solution than a magic man in the sky that we have no evidence for.
You suck my dick, bitch.
I wouldn't say a magic man in the
Fucking
sky.
bitch, talk your unhappy ass to fuck back to China and fuck that goddamn coronavirus back with you. Infect the whole goddamn Chinese government, infect the goddamn Chinese military. Kill them all and let God sort them the fuck out.
To say that the universe has just always been around and then created within
But you keep
itself.
going back to the same empty bar.
Suck my dick. Don't even think about it,
What didn't
slut.
exist and needed to be coming into existence.
Well, according to, it depends what theory you go with, right? Like, according to the Big Bang model, time, space, matter, energy all came into being at a time, like I said.
No, it certainly did not. That's not the Big Bang model. Big Bang model doesn't say there was nothing and then it poof something. Not Big Bang. Big Bang says...
I'm not saying nothing.
You suck my dick, bitch.
I'm saying something outside of time and space had to create
Suck my dick, bitch.
time and space, if there was a beginning.
The Big Bang is an explanation for the expansion of the universe. It's not an explanation of what was before the expansion.
You suck my dick, bitch. Suck my
Okay,
dick,
I guess in
bitch. You
simpler
suck
terms,
my
I think that something can't come from nothing.
I agree. I don't think there's ever
Suck
nothing.
my dick, bitch.
Okay, me neither.
Okay, so you can't get something from nothing, therefore there was never nothing. Therefore, no need for a God.
Well, no, I think therefore God seems to be the only option.
Why? If the universe always existed, why in the world do we need a God to create it?
You suck
Right,
my
that's
dick.
where I
This
think
is where the God of the gap argument
You
isn't
suck my
good,
dick.
right? So what
You
you're suggesting
suck
is
my
you
dick.
think because somebody told you,
Suck
right?
my
Not an actual scientist. Somebody told
You
you
suck
that
my
the
dick.
Big Bang is the start of matter, space, and time.
You
Therefore,
suck-
something
you
must be the
suck
cause
my
of that.
dick.
They're saying,
You
there's a
suck
gap.
my
I'm going to
dick.
stick my God into this gap. But that's silly. Not only
You
does
suck
God
my
not
dick.
provide the best explanation for that gap, we don't even know if that gap is there.
You suck my dick, bitch. You suck my dick.
So do you hold to an infinite universe?
Move, you whore.
Like an evolutionary view?
Yeah, an eternal universe.
Move!
Evolution seems to be obviously true.
So how many years did it take in an
Stupid!
to the present time?
An infinite number.
Cause that was
So it took infinite years for us to get to the present.
The stupid machine.
You're doing a category error right now.
Stupid.
There's a start of infinity and there's not.
Stupid fucker. I got one word of advice for you.
Once again,
resign.
If we're eternal in the past, then it would take infinite years to get to where we're at now.
No.
Okay.
You suck.
Every moment that exists is on a finite piece of the timeline. There's no start to infinity. You can't measure from the start of infinity, just like you can't measure to the end of infinity. There's no start to infinity. So you can't measure from the beginning of infinity to now because it's a category error. There is no such thing as the beginning
You
of
suck my
infinity.
dick, bitch.
Right, which is where I guess kind of confused in eternal universe, right? At what point, right, in infinite past, did creation or evolution start to begin, and how many years? You know what I mean? How many years did it take?
4 billion years ago.
Suck my dick, bitch.
So from 4 billion years ago, when
Kiss that
evolution
fucking
started,
rook goodbye.
before that, and then I mean,
You dick sucker from China.
how did that come into being?
How did what come into being?
The universe.
What you're doing
Existence.
now is just an argument for ability. You're just saying, I don't
Stupid!
God.
Cause that
Can't
was
say that's a winning argument.
I'm just trying to get your view,
What?
Alright,
I guess, because
oh! Yeah, I would
Is
resign.
like
I
one
would
of the
resign
most,
too.
like, tried and
Stupid.
true,
This
like,
stupid
examined
machine.
things of the modern era.
Stupid.
Demonstrates that we all
Mr.
have
Skull, stupid
Have you
machine.
heard of endogenous retroviruses?
Stupid. Stupid.
I'm not sure.
So when somebody gets like a
Stupid.
some sort of foreign invader
on.
into their body, it can actually get into their DNA. It can actually splice
Dumbass.
or modify the existence of DNA.
Stupid.
What's inside your
Cause
genome
that was
just replicates, and then you pass it on to your children, right? And they're pretty easy to identify because you can see the beginning and the end of the foreign DNA, how it got spliced into the existing DNA. And we've actually, like scientists have purposely caused ERVs so they can study them in the laboratory. We're really good at identifying them. That being said, human beings, all human beings, share like 213 ERVs. Which is really interesting. That means all of us came from the same stock of blood at some point in the past. That was a great thing about the Human Genome Project. Now,
Stupid.
a great majority of those ERVs we also share with the great apes, meaning we share blood with the majority of the great apes in the past as well.
Come on, dick sucker.
There's no other possibility for us to have like 190 something ERVs shared with great apes unless we shared blood at one point.
Okay. And ERVs are what again?
Endogenous
damn it.
retroviruses.
Okay. So do you think that because I mean without his within history, I mean science keeps updating and the consensus might be in one way, and then science keeps evolving. You know what I mean? So I don't think it's a fact, or correct me if I'm wrong, but scientifically right that the universe is for sure eternal. Right? This is just a theory. Right, of the universe potentially being eternal in the past,
It's a
right?
theory that has evidence in its favor, whereas the God hypothesis has no evidence. Your only evidence for the God hypothesis is let me find a gap to stuff them in.
Well, I mean, I think creation itself is proof of God. I mean, I think that the universe had a beginning.
Prove it.
God damn it.
Demonstrate that the universe once existed and that a God created it.
Well, I'm a truth seeker, right? Like I'm open to being wrong, but I'm just thinking if I'm going off just being logical and plausible, like I think that a being that was outside time and space creating everything,
God damn it.
The mathematics.
I'm asking
for us to have intelligence.
What's the evidence that would demonstrate that such a being existed and that it did what you're suggesting it did?
Well, I mean, what's the evidence of a painting on the wall having a painter, right? I would say the painting, like, I think the universe itself.
Do we know how paintings come into being?
Well, that's everything that begins has a
But do we have evidence of how paintings come into being? Okay, and we know that paintings come into
everything else that comes into being.
We know that paintings come into being because we know what painters do and we watch them do it, right? So can you distinguish between a painting and a mud puddle?
You suck my dick, bitch.
Yeah, I mean, of course I can. But
What's the difference between a painting and a mud puddle?
God
okay,
fucking
so
damn
a
it.
painting was done by a painter. A mud puddle is more of a natural thing that happens.
So one is essentially self-generating, and one is the cause of biological entities creating it. Right?
Sure. You think it's impossible for...
Looking out at the universe, why would I say that the universe is a painting and not a mud puddle?
Well, sure. Either way, if it's a painting or a mud puddle, I mean, who created the mud or the puddle?
The universe always existed. We already covered this, Witty. Like before you go to, there was once no universe, and then poof, universe, because by God, you need to demonstrate.
Well, because it's expanding.
You need to demonstrate that would be the case. We already addressed the expansion of the universe. I think you were here for that part of the conversation, weren't you?
Well, yeah,
fuck him
once
over
again,
this.
right, like, let me ask you this. If there was a beginning to the universe, would that be proof that there is some kind of being or created?
It still wouldn't. Even if you could demonstrate that the universe was once nothing and then there was material, time and space, it still wouldn't demonstrate that it came from God, especially not the biblical God. Like it could just be a natural phenomenon. It could just be something that happens naturally because of quantum fields. Quantum fields can in fact produce material.
Where did all these come from? You know, all this energy and frequency.
Existed. Matter and energy can't be created or destroyed. Again, there's no science on your side here. There's none.
I would disagree.
Name the science.
I think science explains
the science that exists.
You suck my dick, bitch.
You know, and science isn't going to explain,
Witty,
what came...
Witty, name the science. I've been waiting this entire time for you to give one piece of evidence that agrees with your position. I've yet to hear it.
Science just explains the design and how it works. It doesn't explain how before, like the chicken or the egg, what came first, right? It explains how a chicken has an egg and then a seed, produces a tree, right? It doesn't tell you how they all came here initially in the beginning.
Yes, science literally does do that. So what I'm asking for is find me a piece of science, a piece of evidence, or a piece of logical thought that would lead me to conclude that what you believe is true, because I haven't heard it yet. The only thing I've heard so far is you don't like science, therefore God.
I like science.
Then name some science that will support your theory.
Everything that begins has a cause.
Again, you have no way to demonstrate that it began. What's the evidence that the universe began?
What's the evidence that it didn't begin?
I just don't. It's crazy. Okay, it's like we're in a merry-go-round now. Okay, number one, you can't get something from nothing. We have something therefore nothing. Number two, matter and energy can't be created nor destroyed. I have no reason to believe that there was ever such a thing as nothing.
If everything done is up,
and I know that the universe exists. This is the starting point, right? So I know for a fact that the universe exists, right? So for me to believe that the universe once didn't exist, I need some kind of logical argument or fact that would lead me to believe that the universe once did not exist.
Right. Once again, I mean, we can switch. I got a couple other points if we don't go figure on this. All right. So once again, right? Like the way, and look, you might have a lot more understanding within the scientific community and stuff with the updated whatever than I do. I'm just saying more of like from a philosophical point, right?
Suck my dick, bitch.
Like even if the universe did have a beginning and wasn't here, there would have to be something in it like outside of time and space, right? Or some kind of cause in a different realm.
How do you have a cause and effect outside of time?
Right, it's something that's timeless in space.
How do you have a cause and effect without time? Time is the progression of events. There's no cause and effect outside of time.
Right.
You suck my dick.
Right, because time, to create something, it predates, right? So you'd have to...
So time must
Suck
always
my
exist.
dick, bitch.
Sure, so let's say hypothetically, an eternal being...
Do you believe that Einstein is correct when he says that space-time is a continuum?
Suck my dick, bitch. You suck my dick, bitch.
You know, with the theory of relativity, for example...
Suck my dick,
if
bitch.
as you go towards light, right, then the slower time moves.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about space-time.
Spit.
Are you of the
Kiss your ass.
opinion that science is correct when it says that space and time are a web, a continuum? They are interlinked.
Sure.
Okay, so then what that means is that space and time always existed. Now we're getting even further.
Okay, but let me ask you something. Is this possible? An eternal being outside of time. Okay. That's an internal state, like the speed of light, right?
The speed of light is not an internal state.
Well, I'll put your black ass for Starlight. I'm not talking Joseph Starlight. I'm talking Starlight.
Let's say in a state where there's no aging, there's no
Suck my
time,
dick,
eternal.
bitch.
That being couldn't create
No.
the universe
It couldn't do anything.
You
It can't do anything without time. Without time, there's no progression of events.
But an eternal universe could create something within itself.
Suck my
The
dick,
universe
bitch.
always existed, which means time always existed.
Suck my dick, bitch.
The universe doesn't create itself, it just always existed. The same way you think your God always existed. The difference is I know the universe exists. You have no reason to believe your God exists.
Suck my dick, bitch.
I do actually. Let's go to.
I get to hear one argument for why your God exists. The best you've got so far is God of the gaps. Is God of the gaps all you got?
Spit.
Well, I'm saying there's a God that's eternal, which means there's a universe that's
Prove
eternal.
it.
Because
I know what you
I mean,
believe.
it's the same thing.
Suck my dick.
Restating what you believe is not an argument. I need to hear an argument that demonstrates what you're saying is true.
Right. Once again, I don't want to go. Can we switch to a different question real quick? Because once again, I think your view of the universe being eternal, my view of God being eternal, okay, is very similar actually. We're talking about two eternal states, just different views on what that is, right? So, my other one would be.
You know that none of this could be either, right?
Well, if you can get to an agnostic or a theist view, open to that, and then you get to, there's no reason to debate denominations and,
None of this gets you to Christianity. Christianity's dead in the water.
This is boring!
What you're doing here with your God of the gaps argument.
Okay, so let's go to the,
You suck my dick, bitch. I've seen so many goddamn atheist debates and shows.
Hey guys, quick content warning before we get started here. This video covers topics like essay, grooming, and abuse within the Christian music world. If that's something you're not quite in the right headspace to hear right now, that is beyond totally understandable. I advise you to take care of yourself first. That is always more important than any sort of watch time analytics. And with that out of the way, let's dive into the video.
You suck my dick, bitch.
The
before Christian radio stations worked diligently to scrub his name from their playlists, Michael Tate was considered evangelical royalty. He wasn't just another guy with a guitar in a sermon. He was a model. The blueprint for what a modern Christian rock star should look, feel, and sound like. If you existed in any sort of Christian space within the 90s to the mid-2010s, you knew his face, or at least you knew his voice. Odds are you probably sang his lyrics at some sort of Christian camp or church group, maybe at a megachurch youth group night or a mission trip bus ride. Without even knowing who he was, you knew his songs. Michael Tate's career isn't just another rise and fall story for the internet to gawk at. It represents something bigger, the manufacturing of celebrity within Christianity. It's a blueprint for how faith, fame, and money get blended into something that seems holy but truly isn't. This is the story of how Christianity culture made Michael Tate into a household name, and how it helped to build a Hollywood-like industry more than the church would like to admit. Chapter 1. Michael D. Wayne Tate was born May 18, 1966 in Washington, D.C. to Nathan and Shirley Tate. His father was a Baptist preacher and his mother worked in education. Growing up under a preacher's household isn't like a normal sort of household situation. You are held to a different standard of living. You're not just supposed to live up to the rules or expectations. You are supposed to be the proof or the shining example that these rules work. You are a living, breathing PR prop for your father's ministry. And like a lot of kids raised within the church, Michael found his escape through music. Michael had some pipes on him, and people caught on early. His vocals weren't just church good, they were like record deal good. Even as a teenager, Michael would be turning heads without even trying, having the kind of voice that you can imagine hearing on the radio. In any other context, he probably would have grown up molded by the mainstream as a R&B or maybe a pop singer. But in the strict evangelical age of the 80s, that was not going to happen. Pop music in general was considered dangerous, a trap that you could get lured into doing Satan's bidding. And if you had a gift, you were to use it for the glory of God rather than to squander it on yourself. In the mid-80s, Michael enrolled into Liberty University, a Christian college founded by televangelist Jerry Falwell Sr. More than just a school, Liberty has the reputation of being a sort of Christian pipeline. It was a place that was designed to crank out pastors, youth leaders, politicians, and figureheads for the evangelical community. At Liberty, he met Toby McKean, better known now as Toby Mac, and Kevin Sam Smith, a poet and lyricist with a flair for the dramatics. And together they formed a band called DC Talk. Their sound is exactly what you would expect from an early 90s Christian hip-hop rap group. It was cringe. But in a strangely endearing sort of way. Their pop rap group, it was cringe. But in a strangely endearing sort of way. Their first single, Heaven Bound, dropped in 1989, complete with breakdancing, finger guns, and lyrics that boiled down to "We love Jesus" and "We are better than Run DMC because of it." But despite its cheesiness, it actually caught on. You see, the late 80s and early 90s was a weird time for evangelical America. Still at the tail end of the satanic panic, parents were overall terrified of secular media. MTV was corrupting their kids. Rap music was destroying morals. Heavy metal was practically witchcraft. Even Dungeons and Dragons was considered demonic. I remember my mother wasn't allowed to read Harry Potter because her mother deemed it to be witchcraft. Evangelical parents weren't looking for entertainment. They were seeking protection. They needed a safe alternative. Something their kids could listen to without accidentally inviting demons into the house. And DC Talk became that solution. But it wasn't just about the music. By the early 90s, Christian consumerism was booming. It wasn't enough to just pray anymore. You had to buy sort of Christian products to endorse your faith. Remember, this is a lifestyle we're talking about. Walk into a Christian bookstore in 1995 and find DC Talk CDs right next to VeggieTales VHS tapes, Purity Pledge rings, What Would Jesus Do bracelets, Left Behind novels, King James Bibles, but for youth groups. The Christian media conglomerate had become a billion-dollar industry, built entirely on the backs of fear-mongering mothers. And DC Talk was more than just a band, they became a brand. In 1990, DC Talk dropped their second full-length album, New Thing, spelled Thing, which sold over 300,000 copies, which for Christian music standards is a lot. Just 2 years later, in 1992, they released Free at Last, which actually won them their first Grammy and going platinum. And at this point, DC Talk wasn't just playing to youth group kids anymore. They were headlining full arenas. Then 1995 came along, the year that actually cemented their legacy. That's the year when Jesus Freak dropped. More than just another hit, Jesus Freak was a cultural reset for the Christian youth. It was the perfect blend of grunge and rock and rap. Heavy enough for the teenagers, but safe enough for the parents to endorse. The album sold well over 2 million copies, which for, again, the Christian world is going like triple platinum. And DC Talk toured everywhere, from massive youth group conventions to mega churches to festivals to Christian colleges. They were more than just a band, they were Christian celebrities. And really, that's where the problems start. The Christian music industry within the 90s exploded. Labels like Forefront Records and Sparrow weren't just making albums anymore, they were building up their empires. Christian bookstores sold DC Talk CDs right next to VeggieTales and devotionals. They were on t-shirts, lunchboxes, posters, books, even youth group curriculum materials. I remember my old youth group pastor gave me a book called Jesus Freak, written by DC Talk. It was a sort of semi-devotional littered with stories of all of the martyrs for Jesus, who were the true ultimate Jesus freaks. I found that description on Amazon. I thought it was kind of funny. Young and old alike will ask themselves, what are they trading their lives for? I feel like that was kind of a crazy sentence, right? I wish I still had the book to show off to the camera right now. I've moved so many times. I don't know what that thing is.
Stupid idiot.
I might. Give me a second.
No shot. Dude.
I actually found it. This is nostalgia. Look how cool and edgy this is. You can tell because all of the papers folded weird. Looking back on this, it's so weird because we didn't just read about martyrdom. We romanticized it. We dreamed of the day that we would be persecuted like Jesus was. Like it was some sort of goal to obtain. And I know I'm not the only evangelical kid who remembers it that way. And here's the wild part, the part that really trips me up, kind of grosses me out. I remember like the very first story in this book was about this girl, Cassie. Cassie Bernal, the girl from Columbine. You know the story probably from Urban Myths, but just in case you don't, it's on one of the first pages of this book. She was 17 years old. He stood glaring at her, his weapon before her face. Do you believe in God? She paused. It was a life or death question. Yes, I believe in God. Why? Asked her executioner, but he never gave her the second chance to respond. The teenage girl lay dead at his feet. That story was told, again, everywhere through schools like an Urban Myth, but it was especially popular within Christian circles. Churches, youth groups, books, everybody knew this story. It became the American blueprint for martyrdom. But here's the thing. That story wasn't true. According to investigators, the person who was actually asked about God that day was a girl named Valine, and she went on to survive. Cassie Bernal was never even asked a question. She was shot point blank without any sort of conversation at all. But again, that didn't stop the story from spreading. It didn't stop her mother from profiting off of this lie of her daughter's death to sell books. Because to everyone, that myth was more valuable than the truth of her life. And I find that so sickening. The Christian market didn't just make and sell CDs and devotionals. They sold as death narratives. It taught kids like me that dying for God was the highest achievement possible. That one day we too could be martyrs and make it into the next edition of Jesus Freaks. Looking back, it's hard to overstate how much things like this shaped us. Something's overheating. God got mad at me and turned off the lights. This wasn't just about music. It was cultural programming. And honestly, this book explains a lot about what came next. Because when you prime a generation of kids to believe that they're within this sort of spiritual war, it's only a matter of time before the Christian music industry rebrands itself to being the soundtrack for that war. I guess that's a chapter for a later time. Anyways, parents of DC Talk loved them. They offered a safe, clean alternative to music. Teens loved them because it was the closest they could get to listening to Pearl Jam or Nirvana, but without the part of going to hell. But underneath it all, there was some trouble brewing. In the 2000s, DC Talk announced an indefinite hiatus. After over a decade of touring and recording, the writing was kind of on the wall. The band needed a break. Fans were devastated but watched as they each split off into their own lane for solo careers. Toby Mac's transition was the most seamless. He became one of the biggest names in Christian pop and hip-hop. One of my personal favorite artists growing up listening to, going on to sell out whole stadiums all by himself. Kevin Max went into an experimental indie direction. He leaned heavily into his spoken word bag and kind of faded away from that mainstream appeal. And Michael Tate, well, things got complicated for him. In 2001, Tate launched his first solo album, Empty, which wasn't bad. wasn't good. It cleared Christian radio, but it wasn't the same sort of movement that Jesus Freak had been. In the long run, it failed to live up to the cultural footprint that DC Talk had left behind. And through the 2000s, Michael Tate kind of floated through solo projects. Some public speaking appearances, some Christian festivals. He stayed active, but wasn't the megastar that he used to be. All of that changed in the year of 2009. So there's this group called the Newsboys. They've been around since the 80s. Originally a pop rock group, the band was kind of known for their goofier songs like Shine and Breakfast, quirky Christian radio singles. But in the late 2000s, their lead singer, Peter Fuller, was stepping down, and the band
now buck up and take that.
Instead of merely being a replacement, the idea of bringing on Michael Tate was to completely rebrand and revamp the band. With Michael at the helm, the band shifted into more Anthem Arena-style, massive worship songs, less of the quirky youth group pastor energy, more like stadium praise rock. Think Imagine Dragons, but in a Christian context. And in 2011, just 2 years later, they released their major hit song, God's Not Dead. More than just any other song, this was again a phenomenon. God's Not Dead became the American theme for evangelicalism, perfect for megachurches, youth groups, and stadium crowds. The song hit Christian radio pop like a nuclear bomb. It was practically inescapable. But to be honest, the real success came from something else entirely. The movie. In 2014, PureFlix, a Christian film studio, released a low-budget film also titled God's Not Dead. Kevin Sabaro plays an atheist professor who forces students to sign papers saying that God is dead. Spoiler alert for those who haven't seen the movie. The kid from Good Luck Charlie ends up being a Christian and debates the professor and wins. And then the professor dies and converts to Christianity. So the premise is convert to God or die. I love the subtle nuances here. The movie made over $60 million off a just $2 million budget. And right at the center of it all was Michael Tate. The Newsboys actually make a film appearance. In the film's climactic concert scene, performing God's Not Dead to a roaring crowd. Tate's voice became the soundtrack for Evangelical Defiance. This wasn't just music anymore. This was a Christian rallying cry with a revamped Christian rock star. With the success of God's Not Dead, Michael Tate was surely back on top. But this time, the stakes were even higher. This wasn't the same grungy DC talk. This was megachurch nationalism within music form. Christian concerts weren't just concerts. They were political statements, leading these sort of culture wars for Christ. They performed in major arenas like Winter Jam, the show that I personally got to see in 2013. I wish I still had the poster from that show. When I say that I was like deep into this stuff, I'm so dead ass. I was the youth group. I can't stress enough how much of a fixture the Newsboys were within the evangelical circuit. And Michael was doing more than just singing. He was preaching in between songs. He told crowds to stand up for faith and reject secular influence, to fight back against the so-called decline of America. Michael Tate had become the perfect evangelical tool for America. He was profitable, he was marketable, and he was untouchable. At least that wasn't until the crack started to show. Chapter 2. At first, the Christian media outlets didn't know how to respond. What started as circulated whispers grew louder. The allegations from Instagram comments flooded into Reddit forums of ex-fans trying to piece together what they had heard about in green rooms. And then came the apology post. This was way more than just a PR statement. It was the moment that the entire Christian pop culture empire caved in on itself. Michael Tate, the man whose voice had reigned supreme through church camps, megachurches, churches and stadiums had admitted to all of it. Grooming, sexual misconduct, cocaine, alcohol abuse, and in some cases, assaulting minors. The public face of Newsboys, the voice of Jesus Freak, the headliner of God's Not Dead, just confessed to everything. And when the news broke, it wasn't just fans who were shocked. It was an entire industry that for the past 20 years had pretended not to know. This wasn't just one bad night. This wasn't a scandal where someone slipped up, felt guilty, and then had to come clean. This was a systemic pattern of abuse, carried over the span of 2 decades, hidden behind charisma, fame, and religious authority. Real quick, we need to pause and take a break here. Before we get into this next part, I need to say some stuff for legal reasons. Also, I don't think I was in focus. I don't think I was in focus for a majority of that. My bad, Chief. Everything that I'm about to talk about comes from survivor testimonies, from reports from outlets like The Roy's Report and Christianity Today, and Tate's own public statements. While Tate has admitted to drug and alcohol abuse and what he calls unwanted sensual contact, he has not been criminally charged. So, legally speaking, although of these stories are allegations. All of this is allegedly. That being said, these are all not just baseless rumors. These are detailed accounts from multiple people covering patterns that span over 2 decades. And frankly, I'm personally choosing to side with the survivors. I wanted to throw this out there so I'm not every 2 seconds cutting in with allegedly. So as a lowly YouTuber with a meager understanding of the rational world and legal drama, let's attempt to break all of this down. The first wave of victims came through with reports going as far back as 2004. That's when Michael Tate allegedly began grooming and assaulting young men while touring with the Newsboys. One of the earliest forms of allegations against Michael Tate comes from a man using the pseudonym of Phil, a worship musician who met Tate back in 2004, during this era where Tate was invested within his solo projects. Also, we will not be using any of the victims' real names. Everything here are pseudonyms that you can find within these reports. I'll leave them in the description so you can read them yourself if you'd like. Philip grew up playing in a moderately successful worship band, and like a lot of Christian musicians, ended up in the church festival circuit. And that's where he first met Michael Tate backstage in Oklahoma at a merch table. Philip was 22 at the time, and like most evangelical kids, he had grown up listening and idolizing DC Talk. So when Tate asked to hear Philip's music, Philip thought this was a true sort of mentor moment. They exchanged phone numbers, and Philip was thinking this was an amazing career opportunity. And over the next year, they stayed in touch. And eventually, Tate invited Philip to come hang out in Nashville for a weekend. To stay at his house, drink some beers, play some darts, masculine men stuff, you know. And at the time, Philip didn't think it was weird. This was one of the guys from his favorite band. As a kid, like, yes, you're gonna say yes. And the first weekend was fine. They drank and laughed and played games. But during his second visit within 2005, things started to take a turn. Philip recalls there being lots of beer, lots of cigarettes, and eventually someone within the group suggested that everyone go skinny dipping in Tate's hot tub, which everyone did. Philip said that this sort of stuff wasn't uncommon within Christian music spaces, which is kind of weird. Like the locker room behavior, nudity massages. According to all of the other musicians, it was kind of normal backstage culture. Weird, yes, but apparently not unusual. So when Tate started giving Philip a back rub in the hot tub, he didn't really think anything of it. At some point, Tate started to make odd sexual suggestions, which made Philip very uncomfortable, to say the least. I won't be getting into the sexual implications for YouTube's sake, but just know Philip was very uncomfortable. And later that night, there were no guest rooms available, so Philip and Tate decided to bunk together. Again, this isn't really a weird sort of behavior. For touring culture, it makes sense that you would be bunking with someone else. So the boys got in bed together, and that's when Tate started to rub his back again. But this time, he didn't stop at his lower back. Philip described being frozen and not knowing what to do, and after things eventually escalated, he quickly put a stop to it, saying, "Hey man, that's not really cool of me," and said that Tate stopped and apologized. Philip said it felt like a failed romantic gesture, not a violent attack, and they both went to bed. When he woke the next morning, Tate was gone, and they never spoke again. Looking back on it, Philip now recognizes that the entire situation wasn't just weird. It was a non-consensual sexual contact with someone that was in a state of power. But at the time, he just thought it was a strange night with someone that he idolized, and that he would probably never talk about again. Later, 10 years down the road, Michael has allegations of grooming and assault, this time to a different 22-year-old. This one is named Taylor and was with the Newsboys while on the tour bus. Taylor had started his career working for Christian bands, eventually joining the Newsboys as part of their touring crew. The band was friendly overall, and the culture seemed relaxed. According to Taylor, they drank pretty much every night. There was an unspoken rule about no women staying overnight, but when it came to drinking and late-night partying, nobody really batted an eye. On April 11th, 2014, after a show, Taylor and the crew went to Buffalo Wild Wings, had some drinks, then ended up back on the bus to hit the road for the next gig. By the time everybody went to sleep, Taylor and Tate were still up in the front with the bus driver, drinking cranberry vodkas and yapping the night away. At around 6 a.m., Taylor went to go to sleep, and Tate followed him supposedly to grab his jacket. Tate then asked him if he wanted to try something, pulling out a foil with some cocaine on it, which Taylor declined, unsure if Tate was already partaking. Taylor said that he went to sleep, but minutes later, Tate crawled into bed with him, with Tate rubbing him through his jeans. Taylor said he froze, unsure of what to do in the situation, and kind of shifted his body to let Tate know that he was still awake or waking up, and then Tate left. Thank God. At the time, Taylor didn't know really how to process what had just happened. He told his then-girlfriend, now wife, about it and decided not to report it. He figured Tate was a sort of broken man, and maybe if he just avoided drinking with him again, then something like this wouldn't happen again. In the years that followed, Taylor and his wife ended up leaving the Christian music industry as a whole. And yet another man under the pseudonym of Isaiah had a similar experience to both Taylor and Philip, with grooming and involving unwanted sexual contact. Isaiah met Tate in 2010 while volunteering at a Christian festival, and like most other people, he looked up to Tate for being a sort of spiritual leader. And over time, their friendship evolved from casual friendship to mentorship. According to Isaiah, Tate was often boundary-pushing, using flirtatious language, but was all under the framework guise as being a joke. It was confusing, but Isaiah chalked it up to Christian celebrity weirdness. One night, while hanging out with Tate in private, Tate started massaging Isaiah's shoulders. At first, it seemed harmless, but the massages grew lower, until again he was groping places without consent. Isaiah said, once again, he froze and was caught off guard. He described the feeling of being a mix of shock and shame and spiritual guilt. He didn't know what to say or what anybody would say, so he held on to that. He didn't know how to say no to someone who held so much power within the Christian community. And after the incident, Isaiah tried to minimize the entire situation within his mind. He told himself that it wasn't as bad as he had thought it was. But when he later came to realize that he wasn't alone, he learned that what happened to him wasn't a misunderstanding, it was abuse. These weren't strangers or fans even. They were colleagues, worship volunteers. Each of them described a similar power dynamic. Michael Tate was famous. He was their spiritual leader. He had money, charisma, and cultural influence, and he used it to cross the line. Some allegations, surprisingly, were even worse. A man by the name of Sean said that he was 16 at the time when he encountered Michael at a party. He was offered alcohol, some drugs, and something that seemed cool and exciting at the time. Later, Sean said that he woke up inside of a closet with Tate performing some not-so-consensual stuff on him while he was incapacitated. David claims that Tate even offered him $5,000 afterwards to allegedly silently continue the relationship. Another survivor under the pseudonym of Anthem said he met Tate when he was only 13 years old. They had crossed paths in a Nashville bathroom, and according to Anthem, Tate began to pleasure himself entirely unprompted for 20 to 30 seconds before leaving. And these aren't just accusations of poor judgment. These are accusations of felony-level essay that all have a pattern behind them. The pattern of boundary-pushing, grooming, manipulation, and non-consensual sexual contact, all hidden within the veneer of a Christian celebrity. And the way that it was happening was disturbingly consistent. First, you build trust, and then you blur the lines. You test the waters with bro behavior, massages, jokes that sound flirty but technically aren't. You offer alcohol, some cases drugs, and when the moment feels right, you go further. And if you get called out, you apologize, and if you don't, you just keep going. That's how this kind of abuse keeps happening. It's not a single moment, it's a long, slow erosion of boundaries, melting down the ice caps of discomfort. Michael Tate was a Christian cultural icon. He had money and spiritual influence, and he used it all to get away with this stuff for 20-some years. But how? Well, that's simple. That's because everybody knew. According to the Roy's report, at least 25 other people within the Christian music industry confirms that this was probably one of the biggest open secrets within the space. Even Corey Ashbury said it bluntly, everybody knew. Backstage at festivals and green rooms on buses, people whispered about it, but nobody said anything publicly. Because in the Christian music world, protecting a brand comes first. Again, Michael Tate wasn't just a singer. He was a franchise. The Newsboys were pulling in millions from concerts and merch and Christian radio play. God's Not Dead again grossed over $60 million. Had sequels after sequels after sequels. Tate was part of the evangelical pop culture. Churches, festivals, and bookstores built youth groups around his music. He was too big to fail, and pulling the plug would mean losing money and tours, sponsorships, and album sales. This is what happens when you build an entire empire around Christian celebrity culture. We've seen this before, too. Hillsong covering up for abusive pastors. Rabbi Zacharias was protected by his ministry well after his death, despite years of allegations. Josh Duggar's allegations were hidden as long as it was profitable to keep him propped up in front of a TV. When spiritual leaders become commodities, the system will always protect the brand over the victim. And after Tate's confession, the industry does what it always does when the truth becomes public. They scrambled. Caleb instantly pulled Newsboys' music from their playlist. Capital Christian Music Group dropped the band faster than a kid dropping F-bombs as soon as he leaves Vacation Bible School. Festivals were canceling shows, churches quietly tore down posters, and everybody tried to pretend like the last 2 decades didn't happen. The same people who tried to ignore the rumors for years suddenly decide it's time to be buried, but only when the story is officially out. The question is never, oh, how could this happen? We already know how. The real question is, who else are they trying to protect now? Because if this was the model for what the Christian rock star was...
Slut sucker from China!
You build trust, and then you blur the lines. You test the waters with bro behavior, massages, jokes that sound flirty but technically are. You offer alcohol, some cases drugs, and when the moment feels right, you further. And if you get called out, you apologize, and if you don't, you just keep going. That's how this kind of abuse keeps happening. It's not a single moment, it's a long, slow erosion of boundaries, melting down the ice caps of discomfort. Michael Tate was a Christian cultural icon. He had money and spiritual influence galore, and he used it all to get away with this stuff for 20-some years. But how? Well, that's simple. It's because everybody knew. According to the Roy's report, at least 25 other people within the Christian music industry confirmed that this was probably one of the biggest open secrets within the space. Even Corey Asbury said it bluntly, everybody knew. Backstage at festivals and green rooms on buses, people whispered about it, but nobody said anything publicly. Because in the Christian music world, protecting a brand comes first. Again, Michael Tate wasn't just a singer. He was a franchise. The Newsboys were pulling in millions from concerts and merch and Christian radio play. God's Not Dead, again, grossed over $60 million. Had sequels after sequels after sequels. Tate was part of the evangelical pop culture. Churches, festivals, bookstores built youth groups around his music. He was too big to fail, and pulling the plug would mean losing money and tours, sponsorships, and album sales. This is what happens when you build an entire empire around Christian celebrity culture. We've seen this before too. Hillsong covering up for abusive pastors. Rabbi Zacharias was protected by his ministry well after his death, despite years of allegations. Josh Duggar's allegations were hidden as long as it was profitable to keep him propped up in front of a TV. When spiritual leaders become commodities, the system will always protect the brand over the victim. And after Tate's confession, the industry does what it always does when the truth becomes public. They scrambled. Caleb instantly pulled Newsboys' music from their playlist. Capital Christian Music Group dropped the band faster than a kid dropping F-bombs as soon as he leaves Vacation Bible School. Festivals were canceling shows, churches quietly tore down posters, and everybody tried to pretend like the last 2 decades didn't happen. The same people who tried to ignore the rumors for years suddenly decide it's time to be brave, but only when the story is officially out. The question is never, oh, how could this happen? We already know how. The real question is, who else are they trying to protect now? Because if this was the model for what the Christian rock star was supposed to be, then obviously the model was broken from the start. Chapter 3. I don't know if you've noticed this, but I'm not much of a tabloid drama sort of channel. I cover music-related topics that I find mildly interesting, and I try to push that onto a wider audience because that gives me fulfillment in life. Being able to put someone onto something that's super cool to me, I think that's so sick. Why am I taking time out of my day to do all of this? Well, in my personal opinion, I believe that it's because there's some parallels here that matter. This isn't just a Hollywood problem or a Catholic priest problem. And this isn't just some sort of random niche scandal on some corner of the internet. It's a systemic problem that exists within the Christian music space as well as popular secular music spaces. When someone, anyone with power does harm, the playbook is always the same. They cover it up and they protect the brand. And if it gets out, they spin an apology into a redemption arc. Logan Paul their asses and pull a James Charles. And that's exactly what's happened here.
I've made a severe and continuous lapse in my judgment.
And the best way to prove it is to pick apart Tate's apology line by line. So let's do that. On June 10th, about 5 weeks ago at the time of writing this, Michael dropped this banger of an Instagram apology. This may be one of the worst I've seen in terms of apologies, right up there with Toxic Gossip Train and Travis Scott's Astro World in black and white.
I just want to send out prayers to the ones that was lost.
I'm not about to spend all day talking about this apology letter because there's in black and white.
I just want to send out prayers
to the ones that was lost. I'm not about to spend all day talking about this apology letter because there's truly nothing really here for me. But I did want to address and break down some of the most egregious parts of this for the rest of his audience who might be watching this video. Recent reports of my reckless and destructive behavior, including drug and sex, alcohol abuse, and sexual activity, are sadly already we have some sort of deflections going on here. Reckless and destructive behavior that could be anything. You could say the same thing about like accidentally setting a kitchen fire while making bacon. And sexual activity, it was more than just sexual activity, it was non-consensual sexual activity. That's like saying, no, I didn't commit tax fraud, I committed creative bookkeeping. For some 2 decades, I used and abused cocaine, consumed far too much alcohol, and at times touched men in an unwanted sensual way. Touched men in an unwanted sensual way. Touched men in an unwanted sensual way is like PR gold if your goal was to say literally anything except for what you actually did. We're not talking about like an awkward side hug from a youth group pastor. We're talking about grooming, manipulation, and felony-level sexual assault allegations. Let's try to call it what it is. I've seen some commenters trying to flip this as being a
fucking nasty ass
thing, which is like, oh, he was sleeping and kissing men, and that was the issue. Like, no, bro, it's 2025. If you got a problem like with dudes kissing, you got some personal shit to work out, you know. I could care less if you're a boy kissing a boy, a girl kissing a girl, a car kissing a car. Well, maybe like cars shouldn't kiss because I think that's like car accidents or something. It's kind of dangerous. But the point is, this is more than just men kissing or men touching in a sensual, consensual way. It's about essaying men. That's the real problem that we're trying to get at here. I make no excuses for my behavior, and I will simply call it what God calls it. Sin. And there it is. That's what we call sin washing. When you frame systemic abuse as this sort of personal sin, you skip right over the part where you actually face the consequences for your actions. It's not just a falling short of God's glory. This isn't stumbling. You're abusing your platform to people who trusted you. Like, I get it. In these Christian spaces, everything gets reduced to sin. But not all sins are equal. A kid stealing a lollipop, that's a sin. Lying to your parents, sin. Essaying multiple people over a variety of ages over 20 years while hiding behind your faith, that's more than just a sin, that's fucking criminal behavior. A lot of people under the comments of these posts seem to think that this apology was being humble and honest. Some folks are even hoping that Michael Tate has a comeback, that all he needs is some of that good old Christian redemption. And no, please stop. That's gross. Look, I get that grace and forgiveness is very important, an important concept, especially in the Christian space. But here's the thing. I don't want him back at all. I don't want him headlining church tours again. I don't want him back on stage. I don't want him quietly slipping back into Christian music spaces. That sort of normalization of behavior really worries me. This is exactly how these cycles of abuse continue to happen, by re-allowing these types of people to operate within scenes of power to re-offend. Of all of the things talked about within this PR disaster of an apology, Michael Tate forgot to slip in an apology to his victims. He didn't mention any sort of resolution or restitution for his actions. He took no acceptance or legal consequence. And he had no acknowledgement of the power dynamics at play that made all of this possible. Chapter 4. Things kind of fire. So here's the part that really pisses me off. The thing that really grinds my gears. We've seen this happen over and over, not just within Christian music. I mean, this phenomenon is not new. I am not the first person to give a trigger warning before a 30-minute expose as a YouTuber. It's not even surprising at this point. If anything, it's exhausting. I feel sickened that I feel even exhausted that somebody is, again, getting exposed for hurting somebody else, dropping a heartbroken PR statement. They're going to disappear for a few years and then pretend that nothing ever happened. They will go on to write a book, drop a new worship album, and then suddenly they're back on tour preaching about how God changed them for the better and forgave them for the very thing they shouldn't have been doing in the first place. That's the cycle. It's the Christian forgiveness industrial complex. And let me be clear. I'm not against forgiveness. Hell, I'm not even against second chances in life. I think that there are some terrible human beings out there that are trying to genuinely change for the better. But you can't treat accountability and cancellation like they're the same sort of thing. They're not. Telling someone that they don't get to headline a tour for a church isn't ruining their lives. It's just removing them from a platform which they previously abused. Which, by the way, isn't cancel culture, it's your actions have consequences culture. Like I previously stated, there are consequences happening right now for Tate, from being dropped by his band to being dropped by his label to being dropped from festivals and tours. Consequences are for sure coming, but my main concern is that when operating with this sort of evangelical feel, there's not going to be any true mechanism for consequence. Everything is reduced to just being a sin, and nothing is systemic. Sin frames things as a personal struggle, personal demons with individual suffering. He isn't an abuser, he's just a man who's
think about it.
In struggling with his faith. He was led astray. No, he was a power figure who used his platform to groom, abuse, and manipulate people for over 20 plus years, all while the entire Christian music industry looks the other way. That's disgusting. And what's even worse is that this industry helped him to camouflage, because Christian celebrity brand culture always protects the brand first. This is Hillsong all over again. This is Rabbi Zacharias all over again. This is Mark Driscoll all over again. And this is Josh Duggar all over again. We cannot act shocked every time like we don't know what's going on here. Like the roadmap is public knowledge at this point. Create a celebrity, monetize a celebrity, worship a celebrity, then act devastated when things get too big to hide. Post a Bible verse and pretend like it's a one-off thing, and then rinse and repeat. The Christian music industry is just a smaller vessel of the same machine. It sells redemption arcs because redemption arcs sell Winterfest tickets and God's Not Dead posters. That's why you see the same sort of comments under Tate's posts like, well, at least he's being honest. God can still use broken people, and we're all sinners. Yeah, we're all sinners. Cool. But most of us aren't like grooming crew members on a tour bus and essaying people. This is about power. This is about someone using spiritual clout to get away with hurting people. You can't build an industry where pastors and spiritual influencers and singers get turned into mini-gods and then get surprised when they abuse this power. This system incentivizes abuse and protects charisma over character. It constantly rewards performance over integrity, and then calls itself spiritual warfare instead of what it actually is. The natural result of an unchecked ego mixed with zero fucking accountability. On that note, let's talk about repentance real quick. Real repentance isn't found within a PR statement. Real repentance is stepping away. Quietly, permanently. It means offering restitution for the victims, not just empty apologies, but real, tangible action. Legal cooperation. Making a space for people to heal, even if that means that you don't get to have your platform back. But you'll notice that Michael Tate's letter doesn't include that. No mentions of victims or restitution, no acknowledgement of the power dynamics at play. Just a whole lot of me. I'm ashamed. I'm seeking healing. But people who harm aren't just footnotes in your personal redemption story. And they deserve more than being a subplot to your comeback testimony. Like, I get why people want to believe in redemption arcs. I truly do. It's easier to root for a prodigal son than it is to sit with the reality that someone you loved and trusted was capable of doing something this fucking disgusting. At some point, you just have to ask, what's more important here? Giving an abuser a comeback tour or protecting the next victim? Because statistically speaking, there's always going to be a next victim. So what needs to happen now? First, no more platform. No more stages, no more conferences, no more albums, no more Broken Man healing podcasts. That door needs to stay permanently closed forever. Second, the Christian music scene needs to stop treating this like a PR nightmare and start treating it like it's a systemic issue that needs dealing with. Like, who else is being protected right now? Who else has stories that they've yet to share because they're too scared to speak? How many people choose to stay silent in fear that they are sinning, or to protect the community that they love dear? Third, fans need to stop treating their favorite musicians like their pastors. And honestly, stop treating pastors like rock stars. Celebrity culture has no place within faith communities. We can keep building up these platforms for idols and then keep acting confused when they turn around and abuse this power. We call it a tragedy, but really it's just capitalism within a Jesus costume. And the church is completely complicit because it benefits from the branding. So if you're mad right now watching this video, good. You should be, but don't just get mad at Michael Tate. Get mad at the system that allowed this to happen for 20-plus years without any sort of consequences. Get mad at the enablers and the managers, the tour managers, the festival organizers and labels, the church leaders who knew and said nothing, and then stay mad until you're livid. Stay mad until we stop confusing forgiveness with giving someone a microphone again. Stay mad until victims get more airtime than their abuser's story. Because again, this isn't cancel culture. This is your actions have consequences culture. And this culture needs to change. Thanks for watching this video to the end. Sorry, this is a little different than my usual stuff that I make. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I think that you probably will. If you have any cool video ideas, please also leave them in the comments. I love to hear them. I don't have any sponsors because I'm a small YouTuber. So if you feel like supporting me, go stream my music. I think I have a Patreon. And yeah, never stop creating. Keep pushing those boundaries. And I will see you in the next video.
Was one of the most successful Christian bands of the 1990s. But this wasn't your grandma's Christian music. Kevin Max, Toby Mac, and Michael Tate combined rap, rock, and hip-hop. They sold out concerts around the world and had youthful girls clutching their purity rings in a frenzy. DC Talk had 2 albums go platinum and won 4 Grammys. They were featured on magazine covers and mainstream shows like The Late Show with Jay Leno, and even had their Christian anthems chart on the Billboard Hot 100. Decades later, people still look back on DC Talk with nostalgia, blasting their songs even after walking away from the church. For many, it was the first time Christian music actually felt cool. That is, until 2025, when Michael Tate would have one of the biggest scandals in Christian music of all time. Victims began coming forward one by one, and Michael admitted to living a double life. While preaching traditional family values, he had been assaulting men since the early days of DC Talk. But it wasn't just adult victims. One was a 13-year-old boy. The revelation sent shockwaves around the globe. Yet within the Christian music industry, the reaction was disturbingly underwhelming. Many insiders seemed to shrug and say, yeah, we knew. The response only fueled the outrage. Had it all been a lie? Were these Christian rock stars ever who they claimed to be? How had Michael ended up so protected, so untouchable? This is a story of scandal, betrayal, intense music industry rivalry, and a fallen idol. This is the story of Christian superstar Michael Tate.
Separated, I cut myself clean from a past that comes back in my darkest of dreams.
Before we begin, a quick word from the sponsor of this video, Delete Me. Let's talk about something creepy.
She's cute.
Data brokers. Data brokers are corporations that collect huge amounts of personally identifiable information. Things like past and recent addresses, birthdays, and more, and package it all together to sell our personal information to anyone willing to pay, putting us at risk for identity theft or worse. No federal privacy laws for how our data is mined and shared currently exist. And in 2022, the most targeted age group for identity theft were 30 to 39-year-olds. It makes sense when there's so much of our personal information getting shared online without our consent. But trying to remove one's name, age, address, phone number, past addresses, and the names of relatives can be time-consuming and stressful. Instead of spending countless hours finding every website on the internet that contains your private info and submitting requests to get it taken down, get it done in minutes with Delete Me. Delete Me is an amazing service that will not just find and remove your personal information from hundreds of data broker websites, but they'll continuously scan for new data that shows up and get that removed as well. Delete Me searches all the top data broker websites, and on average, they find and remove over 2,000 pieces of personal data for a customer in their first 2 years. To date, they've removed over 100 million pieces of data for their customers. So if you want to get your personal information removed from search results on the web, go to joindeleteme.com/notthegoodgirl. Delete Me is offering 20% off their privacy plans to all my viewers with my code NOTTHEGOODGIRL. Once again, that's joindeleteme.com/NotTheGoodGirl. Now, back to the video. Michael Dwayne Tate was born on May 18, 1966 in the inner city of Washington, D.C. to his parents Maxine and Reverend Nathal Tate. Michael's father, who often went by Nate Tate, was also raised in Washington after being brought to the city by his mother when her husband was killed by the KKK. In an interview from 2011, Michael's sister Linda said their dad had been a gangster type. Nate
now fucking move that damn whore right there. I'll put your black ass in checkmate. Check there, and I'll stick my dick in your butt.
At the time, Nate and Maxine only had one son, but Nate was separated from them. When he and his wife had been together, they had hot tempers and fought often, with Maxine even pulling a weapon on him one night, threatening him to not leave the house. While working as a taxicab driver, Nate was listening to a sermon one day that moved him so much he pulled the cab over onto the side of the road and said what's known as the Sinner's Prayer, a declaration of faith used by Christians to formally accept their God into their hearts and devote their lives to Jesus. This experience prompted Nate to become a pastor and later a reverend in the Baptist church. He and his wife made up and had 6 more children, with the youngest being Michael Tate. In total, there were 3 boys and 2 girls. For over 40 years, Reverend Nate worked as a street evangelist as well as founding a new Bible church in Washington, D.C. Nate and Maxine had high hopes for their children. It was a given that they would follow their parents into ministry in one form or another, and figuring out exactly what to choose wouldn't really be a choice at all, at least not for the children themselves. From an early age, all of the children were guided towards the church and music. The kids were constantly made to memorize Bible verses, and the family was always surrounded by music, from gospel at church to evangelical records at home. Mainstream artists were strictly forbidden except for Nat King Cole, who became one of Michael's earliest influences. When he visited his friends' homes, he loved hearing Michael Jackson, Frank Sinatra, and Mick Jagger. While Nate and Maxine led a strict household for their 7 children, not all was well. Linda Tate wrote in her book that she and her sisters didn't get along. Linda herself suffered SA that her parents didn't know about. She was failing the 9th grade and ran away from home 4 different times. At age 14 or 15, she became a teen mom, as did one of her sisters at the same age. One sister was addicted to drugs for 10 years. One brother would end up spending over 35 years in jail for dealing drugs. And sadly, one sister passed away from AIDS at age 37. Linda never put any blame on her parents for raising the children in an authoritarian or oppressive household, or even the rough inner-city environment where she grew up. Instead, she said, quote, "My parents loved me through my sin," end quote. Michael and several of his siblings attended Riverdale Baptist School, where they each took their own musical path. Michael taught himself to play guitar, but he preferred to sing.
That's why, darling, it's incredible that someone so
she's cute.
unforgettable thinks that I am unforgettable too.
At the time Michael was finding his voice and honing his skills, Linda was being recognized as a talented vocalist. Her rich alto voice would soon take her to the world stage as a gospel soloist, living the dream her parents had held for her since childhood.
I am happy all the day. At the cross, where I first saw the light, and the burdens of my heart, they rolled away. It was there by faith I received my sight, and now I am happy.
Suck my fucking dick.
I am free all the day.
Suck my dick, bitch.
Linda would later release a total of 15 albums and win a Dove Award, but it was Michael who would make the biggest impression in music, and later for something completely contradictory to the lyrics he sang. Despite being raised by a reverend, it wasn't until Michael was in high school that he decided to convert. In a 2024 CBN interview, he shared that he accepted Jesus as his Lord and Savior after hearing a preacher use scare tactics on his congregants to get them to convert. Michael said, quote, "He preached on the subject of hell and how real hell is, how beautiful heaven is, and how you can't get saved on the back of your dad or your mom." End quote. In that same interview, Michael said that since that day he had tried to live his life according to the scriptures. In the late 1980s, Michael enrolled to study at Jerry Falwell's Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia. If that name sounds familiar, it's because we did a documentary on Jerry Falwell Jr.'s scandalous secret lifestyle with a pool boy. But back in the 80s, Jerry Sr. himself arranged a scholarship for Michael, recognizing the uniqueness of his voice and his natural musical talent. He invited Michael to perform on his TV show, The Old Time Gospel Hour, and to record tracks with the Falwell Singers. In fact, Michael and Jerry were so close that the aspiring musician referred to the evangelical superstar as his white daddy. Back on campus, Michael met Toby McKeon, also known as Toby Mac. Toby was as equally talented and passionate about music as Michael, but he also had a knack for writing songs. In 1987, Toby convinced Michael to record a song he had written called Heaven Bound. Michael had spent most of his airtime singing gospel and what might be considered typical church music, but this new track was something else. Heaven Bound leans hard into early hip-hop with sharp rhythmic verses and scratch effects, contrasted by an evangelistic, catchy chorus. The result was a fresh blend of rap, soul, and rock that had never been heard in Christian music before. When Michael and Toby performed it at a Liberty University event, more than 8,000 students were on their feet. And when they released the track on a self-made cassette, it sold over 3,000 copies. This caught the attention of Forefront Records, a brand new Christian record label formed in 1987 that was actively looking for young, culturally relevant acts that could connect with a new generation of Christian listeners. While Forefront Records didn't sign at that moment, they kept their eye on them. But despite the early success, Michael felt that he and Toby needed something else, or rather, someone else to take them to the next level. After hearing Kevin Mack sing at a university chapel session, they knew they'd found the final piece. Kevin's vocals brought the power the duo was missing. Kevin has a rich voice with a theatrical vibrato. Separately, each guy was good. Together, they were incredible. Kevin was invited to join Michael and Toby, and with that,
Move, you whore!
The name DC Talk was originally Toby's rap name while at Liberty University, but then they decided DC would stand for the Washington, D.C. area, where both Toby and Michael grew up. Eventually, the band decided it needed to have a deeper meaning and said it stood for Decent Christian Talk. In 1988, Michael, Toby, and Kevin independently recorded and released their first album on cassette. Sales were decent, and in 1989, they were picked up by Forefront Records. After signing the contract, the record company moved the guys to Nashville to begin their recording career. Sales were decent, and in 1989, they were picked up by Forefront Records. After signing the contract, the record company moved the guys to Nashville to begin their recording career. Their first album was actually a re-release of their cassette, but this time, Heaven Bound had a music video to match. DC Talk stood out in the Christian music scene, and not just for the type of music they were playing. Typically, mainstream Christian artists avoided controversy and sang about the usual themes of praise and redemption. But DC Talk tackled subjects like doubt, racism, and personal failure with a genre-blending mix of hip-hop, funk, rock, and soul that broke from the traditional praise formula. In their song, What If I Stumble, they wrestled with the pressure Christians face in trying to live out their faith as an example to others, and the fear that their hypocrisy might cause others to question or reject Christianity altogether. The song started out with the line, "The greatest single cause of atheism in the world today is Christians who acknowledge Jesus with their lips, then walk out the door and deny him by their lifestyle." While that might be no surprise to those in the secular world, in Christianity's closed-off world of believers, that one line was huge, especially when it was coming from a chart-topping anthem by their favorite band on every Christian radio station. In their song Colored People from the same album, they pushed for racial reconciliation in a divided culture. The song starts out with the playful line, "Pardon me, your epidermis is showing, sir," and then dives into more serious lyrics such as, "We're colored people and we live in a tainted place. We're colored people and they call us the human race. We've got a history so full of mistakes. We're colored people who depend on a holy grace." While the lyrics themselves weren't revolutionary, in a religion that often sweeps things under the rug and avoids acknowledging the harm it's caused marginalized groups, this was still a groundbreaking moment in Christian music. The music video also depicts a Holocaust survivor with the word "remember" written on the wall behind him. DC Talk may have modernized the sound of Christian music and pushed stylistic boundaries, but their lyrics still reinforced regressive beliefs by rejecting progressive ideals, policing sexuality, and promoting forced pregnancy by opposing abortion and reproductive autonomy. When it came to the world of Christian music, DC Talk stood out in ways that were nearly unheard of in their era. While Toby and Kevin were white men from middle-class backgrounds, Michael came from a large black family in inner-city Washington, D.C. Michael's background brought a different perspective to the group, both musically and personally. Fans loved his rich, soulful voice and his warmth on stage, which gave him a natural ability to connect. Toby brought the energy with quick-fire lyrics and creative direction, while Kevin's poetic theatrical style added a layer of intensity that made the trio impossible to replicate. In the 1980s, black and white Christian artists were rarely part of the same group. While there were occasional collaborations, like the Winnets, a prominent black gospel group out of Detroit who worked with white Christian artists such as Michael W. Smith and Amy Grant, these were usually one-off features, not full partnerships. Bands like Whiteheart sometimes used black background singers, but the spotlight remained on their white frontmen. DC Talk was different. Their lineup was intentionally multiracial, with black and white members sharing lead vocal duties equally.
God damn it.
In that way, they weren't just pushing musical boundaries, they were quietly challenging the unspoken racial norms of the Christian music industry. In 1992, DC Talk released a third album, Free at Last, which went platinum. It stayed at number 1 on the Billboard Christian chart for 34 weeks and got them an appearance on
Isn't that funny? I was remembering the song "What If I Stumble, What If I Fall,"
gold, selling 500,000 albums.
I clicked this video and here it is. This is the people who sung the song
with the mighty clouds of joy. This is DC Talk.
I saw my soul to be good looking. I do. God damn it. God fucking. God damn it. Suck my fucking
dick. By 1993, DC Talk performed on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno, and Free at Last secured them their first Grammy. Michael, Kevin, and Toby were riding high, but DC Talk's biggest hit was yet to come. But first, there were parties and good times to be had.
God fucking.
In 1994, a happy-go-lucky Christian teenager from Arkansas named Jason Jones moved to Nashville to manage his friend's band. Jason was a huge fan of DC Talk, and lucky for him, the friend he moved there for, Randall Crawford, was friends with Michael, so he introduced Jason to his idols. Jason was over the moon, and one day even found himself going to McDonald's with Randall and Michael. He knew Michael was famous, but seeing the effect he had on people was something else.
He'd bring out that whore.
Michael was mobbed by teenage fans, and they had to leave before even getting their meals. As Jason slowly became a part of Michael's inner circle, he realized that things like that happened all the time. But once fully in Michael's inner circle, he noticed some things were off. Michael was constantly grabbing other men's genitals. It wasn't long before Jason realized Michael was living life as a closeted gay man, which was a big surprise considering Michael and DC Talk had been nurtured and supported by Jerry Falwell Sr., a bigot who once declared that AIDS was God's punishment for homosexuality. There's nothing immoral or unnatural about being gay. It's simply one of the many ways people exist in the world. Yet, within Christian culture, the stigma can be especially harsh. Countless LGBTQ people have shared stories of being rejected by the very people who claim to embody God's love. Family, friends, even entire church communities, simply for living openly and authentically. Ellen DeGeneres suffered personally and professionally when she came out in 1997 on her sitcom Ellen. Although the episode was highly rated and praised, the show faced significant backlash. Advertisers like Chrysler, Wendy's, and even JCPenney pulled out. There were protests, the show added a parental advisory warning for, quote, mature content, and Ellen and her co-stars received bomb threats. Ratings declined, and the show was canceled the following year. Ellen became radioactive and said she was blacklisted in the industry for several years after. If that's how it was for a famous person in Hollywood, it would have been much worse for a Christian singer. But Jason didn't care that Michael was gay, and because Jason traveled between Nashville and Arkansas, when DC Talk had a tour stop there, Michael would ask Jason to take him to gay bars in Little Rock. Jason was a virgin and sober at the time, but he was willing to take his friend where he wanted to go. In 1995, they released Jesus Freak, which achieved the highest first-week sales of any Christian release. It spent 79 weeks on the Billboard 200 list and sold more than 3 million copies. Within a year of the release of Jesus Freak, DC Talk albums were being distributed by mainstream label Virgin Records. Soon, DC Talk went double platinum and was being played on MTV, with their tracks appearing on the Billboard Hot 100. Then came a second Grammy and a tour across the US, Canada, and Europe. The tour was filmed and released as a standalone album which earned the group a third Grammy. The video of the Jesus Freak tour could easily be mistaken for a mainstream rock headliner act. Packed arenas, screaming fans, lights and pyrotechnics made the concerts look and sound like a full-scale rock event, not a Christian concert. At their concerts, there were altar calls and moments of prayer, but they were sandwiched between thundering drums, crowd chants, and stage dives. Fans came in youth group vans and lined up for hours just to get a glimpse of the group, and for many, this was the first time Christian music had felt cool.
People say I'm strange,
suck my fucking dick.
A stranger. My best friend was born in a manger. People say I'm strange, does it make me a stranger? My best friend was born in a manger.
While Christian music isn't charting on secular music billboards today, this was the 90s, and Christianity seemed to permeate everything in the US. The 90s brought us stadium events like Teen Mania's Acquire the Fire, where teenagers were made to do free labor and worse under the guise of serving their Lord. Promise Keepers, a Christian men's group, was sweeping university campuses, stadiums, and malls. Promise Keepers brought in $100 million annually to tell dads they could be God's top warrior if they locked their doors at night, stayed faithful to their wives, and made sure to hate the gays. Sister Act 2 fans were singing along with Lauryn Hill, and DC Talk was everywhere. They went on the Arsenio Hall show 2 more times, once in 1993 and again in 1996.
Go ahead, man, break it down. When you really break it down,
we're just 2 honks and a Negro serving the Lord. We're just...
When you really break it down,
we're just 2 honks and a Negro serving the Lord. We're just 2 honks and a Negro singing our song.
However, DC Talk had its Christian critics. Some fundamentalist Christians refused to call DC Talk Christian music, claiming there was no such thing as Christian rock because rock music was of the devil. But they weren't stopping anyone from listening to Christian rock. When DC Talk released their next album in 1998, Sales surpassed Jesus Freak, debuting at number 4 on the Billboard charts, the highest ever for a Christian album. Not long after, Jesus Freak went double platinum, and DC Talk was leading the charge of the booming Christian music scene. Groups like Point of Grace and Jars of Clay were dominating Christian radio, and Michael W. Smith continued to release best-selling albums that blended worship and adult contemporary pop. The closest competition DC Talk had in the rock genre was Audio Adrenaline, who were also represented by Forefront Records. While Amy Grant was getting canceled for getting divorced, Rebecca St. James was also making her own mark on the industry. But DC Talk had become a brand in its own right, far exceeding anything in the Christian music scene to date. Toby, Kevin, and Michael were on the road anywhere from 150 to 250 days of the year. In the contemporary Christian music industry, aka CCM, it's common for pastors or chaplains to accompany artists on tour, and DC Talk was no exception. Pastor Michael Guido accompanied the trio on tour buses and backstage, and even to the GMA Honors Ceremony, as shown in this picture. Michael Tate was quoted as calling him a shepherd, saying he would leave the 99 to go after the 1. To accompany artists on tour, and DC Talk was no exception. Pastor Michael Guido accompanied the trio on tour buses and backstage, and even to the GMA Honors Ceremony, as shown in this picture. Michael Tate was quoted as calling him a shepherd, saying he would leave the 99 to go after the 1. While DC Talk was racking up awards, Jason worked hard to make his mark in the industry, and in 1995 he co-founded a band with another friend of his named Ben Moody. That band was Evanescence. Jason worked with lead singer Amy Lee and the rest of the band to record their first demo, and soon he was back in Nashville. This is when Michael hit him up, inviting him to a seemingly endless circuit of parties and booze-fueled nights. Jason was eager to go along, hoping Michael might help Evanescence gain a foothold in the industry, as they had yet to be signed by a major label. But as Jason would later tell The Guardian, he got lost in the haze of partying that surrounded Michael at the time. They would stay out at bars into the wee hours of the morning, only to return to Michael's house to smoke pot and keep drinking. Jason claimed to feel conflicted about all this, as he told The Guardian, quote, "I had this band..." No exception for pastors or chaplains to accompany artists on tour, and DC Talk was no exception. Pastor Michael Guido accompanied the trio on tour buses and backstage, and even to the GMA Honors Ceremony, as shown in this picture. Michael Tate was quoted as calling him a shepherd, saying he would leave the 99 to go after the 1. While DC Talk was racking up awards, Jason worked hard to make his...
God damn it.
His mark in the industry, and in 1995 he co-founded a band with another friend of his named Ben Moody. That band was Evanescence.
Boom,
Jason worked with lead singer Amy Lee and the rest of the band to record their first demo, and soon he was back in Nashville. This is when Michael hit him up, inviting him to a seemingly endless circuit of parties and booze-fueled nights. Jason was eager to go along, hoping Michael might help Evanescence gain a foothold in the industry, as they had yet to be signed by a major label. But as Jason would later tell The Guardian, he got lost in the haze of partying that surrounded Michael at the time. They would stay out at bars into the wee hours of the morning, only to return to Michael's house to smoke pot and keep drinking. Jason claimed to feel conflicted about all this, as he told The Guardian, quote, "I had this band that I was trying to take places, and Michael had the power to open doors for us in the industry. So I went along with whatever, but didn't know what it would cost me." End quote. Jason was able to use his connections with Michael to help Evanescence break into the industry. As reported by The Guardian, quote, "Sources that wish what it would cost me." End quote. Jason was able to use his connections with Michael to help Evanescence break into the industry. As reported by The Guardian, quote, "Sources that wish to remain anonymous allege that Michael had parties and booze-fueled nights. Jason was eager to go along, hoping Michael might help Evanescence gain a foothold in the industry, as they had yet to be signed by a major label. But as Jason would later tell The Guardian, he got lost in the haze of partying that surrounded Michael at the time. They would stay out at bars into the wee hours of the morning, only to return to Michael's house to smoke pot and keep drinking. Jason claimed to feel conflicted about all this, as he told The Guardian, quote, "I had this band that I was trying to take places, and Michael had the power to open doors for us in the industry. So I went along with whatever, but didn't know what it would cost me," end quote. Jason was able to use his connections with Michael to help Evanescence break into the industry. As reported by The Guardian, quote, "Sources that wish to remain anonymous allege that Michael had a rotation of attractive young men at his Nashville home at this time, some of them underage, and that Michael had a no clothes allowed rule in his hot tub. He would put his genitals against one of the jets and tell us to do the same, saying, 'See, it feels good,'" recalled a source who visited Michael regularly at this time and wishes to remain anonymous, end quote. In 1998, the Reverend Nathal Tate passed away. It was after losing his father that people close to Michael said he began displaying reckless behavior. Randall Crawford, the young man who introduced Jason to Michael, told The Guardian that Michael was all about the shock factor. When they were out at parties, Michael would turn to Randall and say, "Let's make out in front of these people." Randall would reply, "No, you're gonna destroy your career." But Michael felt invincible. One night, Randall was driving in Michael's car with him as he sped through the Liberty University campus. The speed limit on campus is 20 miles per hour, but Michael was clocked driving 60 miles per hour. Campus security angrily approached the car, but as soon as they saw it was a member of DC Talk driving, they became friendly and upbeat, and even asked for pictures and autographs. Once campus security drove away, Michael calmly turned to Randall and said, "I can do anything and not get in trouble." Randall and Jason had no issue with their friend living as a closeted gay man, but what they didn't realize was that Michael's behavior would cross a very different line, one that had nothing to do with his sexuality and everything to do with abuse. Sadly, Jason would be the first to find out, but not the last. The same year Michael's father died, Jason said he was drinking at Michael's home one evening, shortly after DC Talk had wrapped rehearsals for their Supernatural tour. Feeling suddenly exhausted, Jason recalls Michael suggesting he lie down in his bedroom. Jason said, "I remember feeling genuinely honored that he trusted me enough to let me sleep in his bed." Later that night, Jason said he woke up without his pants on and claimed Michael was assailing him. Jason said he told him no and tried to push him away, but blacked out again. When he woke up a second time, Michael was still assailing him. Then he blacked out again. When Jason came to a third time, he yelled no and forcefully shoved him. Michael finally stopped. Reflecting on the incident, Jason said, "I truly believe Michael drugged me." It seems that drugging victims' drinks would become Michael's signature move. Jason was traumatized and needed to be around those he was closest with. The next day, he flew home to Arkansas, where he told a close friend what happened. As time went on, Jason's friends noticed him spiraling. He was no longer the positive young man he had once been. His moods radically shifted from paranoia to rage to depression to disassociation. In 1999, Jason wanted to warn his friend and Evanescence co-founder Ben Moody to be on the lookout for Michael. Ben was only 18 years old at the time, and Jason was worried about him because Michael was regularly flying Ben to Nashville to write songs together. Ben was becoming a part of Michael's inner circle, and Michael was circling his prey. Jason's warning would blow up in his face and nearly destroy his life. Ben told Michael that Jason said there had been a sexual encounter between them. Michael denied it. As Ben told The Guardian, quote, "I wanted to get ahead of Jason talking shit about us and ruining the whole thing. Back then, there were rumors Michael Tate was gay, and at that point, right after DC Talk's Grammy-winning album Jesus Freak, he was the biggest thing in Christian music history, and the scandal would have been a huge deal," end quote. Ben claims he and Evanescence began closing Jason out, wondering if he was okay enough to continue working with them. Jason claims he was fired. Ben claims Jason quit. Regardless, after years of working with the band he co-founded and using his connections to get them noticed in the music industry, Jason was removed right before Evanescence got a record deal and went on to win 2 Grammys. Depressed, shunned, and re-victimized by someone he thought would have his back, Jason secluded himself and went on a 5-year drug bender. By the time he was sober in 2008, he contacted a law firm about seeking compensation because of his work with Evanescence. He was told the statute of limitations had run out years earlier. The attorneys told him that if he had pursued a case sooner, he could have been entitled to up to tens of millions of dollars in compensation. Jason's career in the music industry was dead. He said he never went on to have the success he could have had he have not met Michael Tate. In hindsight, Ben told The Guardian, quote, "I didn't know what he was going through. Looking back, I would have been a bit more attentive, but I was the typical 18-year-old who wanted to be a rock star. He was my best friend for so many years, and now I ask myself, how fucking blind could I have been?" End quote. Ben, however, went on to clarify that Jason never had the right to compensation for his early management work with Evanescence. In 1999, best friend for so many years, and now I ask myself, how fucking blind could I have been?
That's funny, how fucking...
Randall Crawford, the young man who introduced Nathal Tate, passed away. It was after losing his father that people close to Michael said he began displaying reckless behavior. Randall Crawford, the young man who introduced Jason to Michael, told The Guardian that Michael was all about the shock factor. When they were out at parties, Michael would turn to Randall and say, "Let's make out in front of these people." Randall would reply, "No, you're gonna destroy your career." But Michael felt invincible. One night, Randall was driving in Michael's car with him as he sped through the Liberty University campus. The speed limit on campus is 20 miles per hour, but Michael was clocked driving 60 miles per hour. Campus security angrily approached the car, but as soon as they saw it was a member of DC Talk driving, they became friendly and upbeat, and even asked for pictures and autographs. Once campus security drove away, Michael calmly turned to Randall and said, "I can do anything and not get in trouble." Randall and Jason had no issue with their friend living as a closeted gay man, but what they didn't realize was that Michael's behavior would cross a very different line, one that had nothing to do with his sexuality and everything to do with abuse. Sadly, Jason would be the first to find out, but not the last. The same year Michael's father died, Jason said he was drinking at Michael's home one evening, shortly after DC Talk had wrapped rehearsals for their Supernatural tour. Feeling suddenly exhausted, Jason recalls Michael suggesting he lie down in his bedroom. Jason said, "I remember feeling genuinely honored that he trusted me enough to let me sleep in his bed." Later that night, Jason said he woke up without his pants on and claimed Michael was essaying him. Jason said he told him no and tried to push him away, but blacked out again. When he woke up a second time, Michael was still essaying him. Then he blacked out again. When Jason came to a third time, he yelled no and forcefully shoved him. Michael finally stopped. Reflecting on the incident, Jason said, "I truly believe Michael drugged me." It seems that drugging victims' drinks would become Michael's signature move. Jason was traumatized and needed to be around those he was closest with. The next day, he flew home to Arkansas, where he told a close friend what happened. As time went on, Jason's friends noticed him spiraling. He was no longer the positive young man he had once been. His moods radically shifted from paranoia to rage to depression to disassociation. In 1999, Jason wanted to warn his friend and Evanescence co-founder Ben Moody to be on the lookout for Michael. Ben was only 18 years old at the time, and Jason was worried about him because Michael was regularly flying Ben to Nashville to write songs together. Ben was becoming a part of Michael's inner circle, and Michael was circling his prey. Jason's warning would blow up in his face and nearly destroy his life. Ben told Michael that Jason said there had been a sexual encounter between them. Michael denied it. As Ben told The Guardian, quote, "I wanted to get ahead of Jason talking shit about us and ruining the whole thing. Back then, there were rumors Michael Tate was gay, and at that point, right after DC Talk's Grammy-winning album Jesus Freak, he was the biggest thing in Christian music history, and the scandal would have been a huge deal." End quote. Ben claims he and Evanescence began closing Jason out, wondering if he was okay enough to continue working with them. Jason claims he was fired. Ben claims Jason quit. Regardless, after years of working with the band he co-founded and using his connections to get them noticed in the music industry, Jason was removed right before Evanescence got a record deal and went on to win 2 Grammys. Depressed, shunned, and re-victimized by someone he thought would have his back, Jason secluded himself and went on a 5-year drug bender. By the time he was sober in 2008, he contacted a law firm about seeking compensation because of his work with Evanescence. He was told the statute of limitations had run out years earlier. The attorneys told him that if he had pursued a case sooner, he could have been entitled to up to tens of millions of dollars in compensation. Jason's career in the music industry was dead. He said he never went on to have the success he could have had he have not met Michael Tate. In hindsight, Ben told The Guardian, quote, "I didn't know what he was going through. Looking back, I would have been a bit more attentive, but I was the typical 18-year-old who wanted to be a rock star. He was my best friend for so many years, and now I ask myself, how fucking blind could I have been?" End quote. Ben, however, went on to clarify that Jason never had the right to compensation for his early management work with Evanescence. In 1999, the trio sang the national anthem in Las Vegas, looking a lot less excited and happy than usual.
Ladies and gentlemen, DC Talk.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets ringing, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
1 year later, their fans and the Christian music scene in general were shocked when DC Talk announced they were taking a break from recording and touring in order to pursue solo music careers. Those efforts were immortalized in a special edition EP which featured 2 songs from each of their individual endeavors. Ironically, even though the group was no longer together, this compilation album scored them a 4th Grammy. The same year DC Talk announced their break, Randall Crawford, the man who introduced Jason to Michael, became Michael's next victim. Randall's first encounter with DC Talk happened back in 1989 while they were shooting the music video for their debut single Heavenbound. At the time, Randall was working at a movie theater inside a Nashville mall, the same mall where the band happened to be filming. He already had their first cassette and recognized the trio when they stopped by to see a movie. Randall introduced himself and gave them discounted tickets. At the time, Randall was an up-and-coming songwriter who would later make a name for himself in the industry, including working on Michael and TobyMac's solo albums. But back in the year 2000, Randall had been in a relationship with a woman Michael had introduced him to. That relationship came to an end, and Randall was distraught and Michael had introduced him to. That relationship came to an end, and Randall was distraught and emotionally vulnerable. Just a few months earlier, Randall claimed to have narrowly avoided another assault, this time by a Christian country musician during a late-night songwriting session. He had shared the experience with Michael, who then invited him over under the pretense of offering emotional support. According to Randall, Michael told him, "Dude, come over, I'll cure you, buddy." So Randall went to his place. Michael put on some Coldplay and then said, "Hey, let me get you a drink," and poured him a shot of Maker's Mark. Michael drank the shot, and soon after, he blacked out. When Randall came to
You cannot be that stupid.
"Whoa, what are you doing?" To which Michael
I just eat you're cutting off your left ear.
Michael then stopped assaulting him and acted like nothing happened. Randall was groggy and disoriented. It was clear to him he had been drugged. Randall said,
Shut
I was never the same after that. The joy and drive I had for music went away. Suddenly, I had stage fright for the first time, brain fog, anger issues, depression, and was even suicidal for a time. It ruined my career, end quote. At the time, Randall had just finished recording an album for his band, but due to the trauma, he felt unable to perform as a musician, and his album was never released. At the time of this recording, it's unknown if Pastor Guido, Toby, or Kevin knew of Michael's predatory behavior, but Michael was just getting warmed up. He was now a superstar with worldwide fame. In Part 2, we'll discuss how Michael embarked on a solo career and later got to relive his glory days as the lead singer for Newsboys, taking them to new levels of fame in the decade following 2010. But behind the scenes, Michael was leaving a trail of victims in his wake, including a 13-year-old boy, and some even caught on camera. Michael sang about being in the light, and in 2025, his CROCK finally blew. You can click and watch Part 2 at the end of this video.
Kiss that whore goodbye! Kiss that motherfucking whore goodbye.
I actually turned a little bit schizophrenic for a while, and then I became a raging alcoholic. I freaked some people out.
Jonathan Davis was never your average rock star. He was the weird kid, bullied, broken, working in a morgue.
I should have been seeing shit at 17 years old that I saw. It fucked me up for a long time after that.
But then came Korn, and with it came everything else. Addiction, panic attacks, death, heartbreak. He faced it all, and somehow he's still standing.
Straight up, there's nothing tough about me.
This is the story of Jonathan Davis.
Alright, fuck is home! Oh, he abandoned the game.
Jonathan Hausman Davis entered the world in 1971 in Bakersfield, California. Hardly the birthplace you'd expect for a future rock icon.
I was born and raised here out of country stuff.
His childhood was anything but golden. As a little kid, he was in and out of hospitals with severe asthma, even flatlining once before being yanked back into the brink.
It's happened to me a lot. I had a lot of near-death experiences. I wasn't out there, it was just like, because I had asthma so bad, they'd sit me and just tell my parents, so get him through the night, he has a chance. A lot of stuff like that. I grew up in fucking tents. They would stick you in a tent over your bed, you'd lay there.
Move, whore!
They gave you this fucking horrible drug called Quickron, which is like cocaine and alcohol.
How old were you when you got that?
I had horrible asthma started when I was 3 years old. So it was around 4, 5, 6 years old. That was like the old drug they gave me. And the only thing that opened up your airways is like epinephrine and stuff like that. So it was drugs like that that would help me breathe.
His parents split up when he was 3, and Jonathan ended up living with his dad and a stepmom who, by all accounts, made his life hell. This domineering stepmother resented the boy and allegedly pulled cruel stunts like spiking his tea with hot chili oils just to watch him suffer.
That time sucked.
It was the kind of twisted upbringing that could break anyone, but for Jonathan, the anger became energy, the trauma became lyrics, and with a father that was somewhat in the music business, he already had a map. All he had to do was follow the pain.
I've shit 3 times.
Yeah, my dad was a musician, my mother was, they were both in the theater. My mom danced and acted in the plays, and my dad was always in the band, and he also was a touring musician. So I was always surrounded by music.
Then there was the darkest secret of all. a childhood scar that wouldn't stay buried. When he was little, Jonathan endured trauma no child should ever suffer. He was violated in a way we can't describe here. But when he tried to tell his family, they didn't believe him, which in itself is also very traumatic. Betrayal and hurt from that would later pour out in Korn's infamous song, Daddy, a harrowing track where Jonathan screams and sobs through the memories. So, by his late teens, Jonathan was carrying around more baggage than most of us could imagine. And school wasn't any safer. He was that weird kid nobody understood.
I'm a merry, sissy, faggoty man. Straight up, there's nothing tough about me. And that's why I always got picked on. I wasn't ashamed to say that I was sensitive. I'm not ashamed to say that I cry. I'm not ashamed that I get my feelings hurt over stuff, because those are real emotions. I think people need to deal with those things, and then it wouldn't be so bad. You know? Yeah. There's a stigma around, you gotta be a man.
Now fuck up and overlook this.
I think I'm more man
now stick my dick in Bill Bishop's
tough guy.
Now stick my dick in Bill Bishop's butt.
Yeah.
That's one of those pieces you buy.
He developed an early love for Duran Duran.
Yeah, it was like Bakersfield,
Shine
for us to love bands like Duran Duran was not cool.
Kicked in the ass.
Yeah. That's not what Josh was listening to.
No, hence the song Fat Kid. You know, I was considered to peg my pants and wore eyeliner.
Yeah.
And I had to, it was funny because I was living with my dad at the time. He forbid me from doing that, so I had to sneak. And once I got out of the house and got to school, I'd run to the bathroom and put my eyeliner on, peg my pants and do all this shit.
No, you whore!
What I was into at that time, but those farm boy dudes were not having it.
Being a sensitive gothic kid, he was unfortunately bullied and picked on.
I was picked on just so bad.
Come on, you slut!
Guidance counselors telling me I was gay, and they're sending me to gay counselors, and telling those fools, what the fuck? I'm telling you I'm straight. Oh, but you need to go see this. It's like, what the fuck is going on? I don't know what's going on. So there's just that weird mentality at that time.
In school, he joined the choir and picked up the bagpipes. Not your typical start to a rock career.
And I listened to everything. So there wasn't necessarily any kind of certain style of music. I just listened to everything. And when I got into junior high,
you suck my goddamn motherfucking dick,
when MTV started. And actually, MTV Bakersfield was a test market for that at the time. And I actually saw the first, when they came on the air and they played video killed Radio Star, I saw that, and I sat my ass in front of that TV all the time and just watched all those videos and all those bands, and that just made me start thinking, I don't want to do this. I still want to do this.
But things took a darker turn when he got a job as a coroner's assistant, spending his days surrounded by death.
On the weekends, I'd go hang out at my mom's house and stuff. We'd go to the video store, and we'd go rent videos. And I was really into horror films, so those really led me into becoming a coroner's assistant back in the day when I did autopsies, because I loved horror films so much. It was something about being scared and just that dark vibe. At that time, I've always just been, I don't know, something about dark stuff has always grabbed me. So I'm like, I wonder what it's like to go cut up dead bodies. So I did 3 interviews to get in. They had to do the psych background, everything, and I finally got in. And I started doing autopsies at 17. So I did that 17, 18, and then I went to Frisco, and I went to the San Francisco College of Mortuary Science and became a mortician. Came back here, was an embalmer, and then at night, I would go to the coroner's office, and I was starting to be an investigator, so I didn't have to get my hands dirty per se doing an autopsy. I'd just be an investigator and go investigate, deaths. Really crazy time in my life. I mean, it fucked me up for a while. I didn't know it, but later it would have fucked me up. I shouldn't have been seeing shit at 17 years old that I saw. But, yeah, but I did, and I was really into it for a while. Fucking depressing shit. It was very sad. I mean, every day I was dealing with just poor people losing their loved ones, and in the funeral business, it's you see it more. And when I was just working as an autopsy assistant, and the more doing autopsies is me, some stiffs, and a doctor. That's it. And that I could deal with, but when you actually see the families and stuff like that, it started to get to me. And then when I was doing autopsy, I was autopsying kids and stuff like that, so it was bad. I'm glad I got out of it, but I mean, I'm glad I did. It got me to where I'm at now, but I saw a lot of really crazy shit.
Around the same time, he joined a local band called Sex Art, but they weren't going anywhere.
And the note said, let there be sex art, let there be screaming.
Then came one random night in 1993 that changed everything. He was playing a gig at some Bakersfield club when three guys, Monkey, Fieldy, and David, saw him perform. They were part of a different local band, and they just lost their singer. So after seeing Jonathan performing up there, they knew immediately he was their guy. After the set, they asked him to join their band, but he wasn't sure what to do. Jonathan being Jonathan, he didn't turn to logic. Instead, shortly after, he turned to a psychic, and she told him exactly what he needed to hear. Take the leap and join that fucking band. So he gave it a shot, rehearsed with the guys, and after just one session, he knew this was where he belonged.
Take the fucking...
The guys, and after just one... So he turned to a psychic, and she told him exactly what he needed to hear. Take the leap and join that fucking band. So he gave it a shot, rehearsed with the guys, and after just one session, he knew this was where he belonged.
Suck my slut!
The band that emerged would call itself Korn.
Me and some of my friends in Bakersfield back in the day were at this party, and there was two gay guys talking about how they loved punching each other.
Okay.
And the one dude was talking that he was punching his lover, and the guy shit all over his face. He had a corn kernel on his tongue.
Okay, got it.
So that's how it came about.
Our manager at the time, Larry, we told him we're going to call it Korn, and he's like, you can't name your band Korn. So we told him, well, we're going to name it Larry then. And he's like, fuck you. I'm like, it's going to be either Larry or Korn. You fucking pick. I fucking chuckle to this day that my band's name is Korn. It's fucking funny. We twisted it and spelled it different with the backwards R, and it made it kind of like spooky, and it worked.
Korn's lineup solidified in 1993. Jonathan on vocals, James Monkey Schaffer and Brian Head Welch on 7-string guitars, Reginald Fieldy Arvizu on bass, and David Silveria on drums.
Fieldy was the telemarketer because he was the telemarketer. Fieldy get on the phone and he would hit promoters up and book his shows. He's like, man, we need a logo. We gotta send him a logo. I grabbed a crayon and a piece of paper and I wrote Korn in my left hand like a child would write it. And that became the logo. And then we burned it into a screen printer and we started pulling stickers and then we smacked them everywhere. From Huntington Beach to Sacramento, we slapped those stickers on stop signs and people started going, what the fuck is Korn?
It was out of control, dude. Like every street sign in Huntington had a Korn sticker on it.
Oh my god.
It was out of control.
Their turning point came when a representative from a small label under Sony caught a show at Huntington Beach's Crawl Space Club. The band's intensity on stage, particularly Jonathan's unhinged performance, was so feral and brutal that the label signed them almost on the spot. Ross Robinson, the godfather of nu metal, was tasked with producing their debut album, and the band entered Indigo Ranch Studios in Malibu. There, Jonathan let it all out, recording vocals in complete darkness, often semi-naked, pacing like a caged animal to get into the right headspace. The result was a 1994 self-titled debut album that didn't sound like anything else in the industry. A a wild fusion of down-tuned, rumbling metal riffs and hip-hop grooves, with Jonathan's tortured, cathartic vocals on top.
The genius of that cover was Monkey. Monkey was the one who came with that idea. He's like, just go look up in the sun and you see a shadow. You don't know what it is. And then when we saw it, holy fuck, amazing. That freaks some people out.
It's kind of show you like the dark side of everything that's innocent. Pretty much, you know, because without this, it's an innocent picture. But when you add the shadows, the dark side to the picture. You know what I mean?
It was so spooky, that album cover.
Pretty much, you know, because with the dark side of everything that's innocent. Pretty much, you know, because without this, it's an innocent picture. But when you add the shadows, the dark side to the picture. You know what I mean?
It was so spooky, that album cover, the way it looked, to see the band. There's just so many different things that contradicted each other.
Nobody could predict it, but Korn had just kicked off a cultural evolution.
It didn't match anything in the world. It was to goth and femme. You know, Jonathan's flamboyancy, and then the music was all dark and heavy. It was not poppy, you know.
They had one foot in heavy metal, but also drew from funk, hip-hop, and even ska and industrial influences to create something entirely new. Fieldy's bass slapped and popped like a funk bassist, David's drumming mixed tribal rhythms with hip-hop beats, and Monkey and Head's guitars produced ominous atonal squeals and grinding 7-string riffs. To cap it off, Jonathan would unleash scat-like vocal gibberish and even play the bagpipes on certain songs.
When the album came out, the only thing they can compare John's voice to was Eddie Vedder.
Oh yeah.
That's identity. You know, people need to attach something, but that feeling was so intense coming off their music and their performances was like it was so heavy in an internal way that you couldn't deny it. It was there.
It was there.
Yeah, special and forever. Like it'll never go away.
It was chaotic, confrontational, and absolutely original. With songs like Blind, which opens with Jonathan's iconic guttural shout of "Are you ready?" Korn's debut was basically asking us if we were ready for a new sound that would later be called nu metal, though nobody had a name for it yet.
Honestly, I can't tell you how many people told me that we create this new genre of metal, new rock, new metal.
Everybody else in the crowd,
I don't really know how to take it. I do agree that we changed the music scene.
Everybody else in the crowd
heavy music on a different route.
At first, heavy metal purists didn't quite know what to make of Korn's hip-hop tinged grooves, and alternative rock crowds were baffled by their down-tuned heaviness. In their first couple of years, Korn would get thrown onto all kinds of tour lineups, opening for punk bands, hardcore bands, even opening for No Doubt, simply because no one knew where they fit. However, what Korn lacked in mainstream support, they made up for with authenticity.
You know, emotionally I think it's a little bit of a toll on Jonathan because a lot of the lyrics or some of the songs are just really personal about stuff he went through, you know.
Jonathan's lyrics spilled out his deepest traumas.
That is how I deal with the things that go on in life. And we all have shit going on in life, and it never stops. You know, earlier records are a lot of me dealing with my childhood and stuff, but you know, as each record goes on, you know, shit happens in life, and that's how I deal with it. So it's always been that. Some people, you know, go to therapy or church or whatever they want to do, and it's all good. But for me, I gotta just get it out with my heart.
The lyrics were all dark and wild and revealing, you know.
The final track, Daddy, which I mentioned earlier, was the most infamous of all. In that song, Jonathan confronted the abuse he endured as a child, and during the recording he broke down sobbing uncontrollably. Ross Robinson kept the tape rolling, captured all. In that song, Jonathan confronted the abuse he endured as a child, and during the recording he broke down sobbing uncontrollably. Ross Robinson kept the tape rolling, capturing over a minute of Jonathan's anguished weeping at the end of the track. It's an uncomfortable, real moment that few artists would ever dare to put on a record. But Korn dared, and that brutal vulnerability struck a nerve with a generation of young listeners. Many kids who felt alienated, abused, or angry when they heard Korn's early songs knew exactly what that pain was about. Korn were outcasts and their fans were outcasts, so together they formed their own little tribe outside the mainstream.
And we didn't know if it was going to sell. Like, we thought that we could do okay because we had a sound, but I mean, even the record company told us, like, you'll be lucky if you sell 90,000 records or something. That'll be really good. So, like, for us to go multi-platinum, I'm just like, so, you know, just at the time, stepping back and look at the industry now, we got to step in before the records stopped selling, you know, so it was
talking about the records now would be,
dude.
In 1996, Korn released Life is Peachy, debuting at number 3 on the Billboard charts. They had little radio play and almost no TV coverage, but what they had was a fiercely loyal fan base built from the ground up.
I've just been basically asking everybody this, like, what Lollapalooza means to them. Does it mean anything to you other than, like, a great festival where people hear varied music? Or
that's about it. I think it means, like,
everybody this, like, what Lollapalooza means to them. Does it mean anything to you other than, like, a great festival where people hear varied music? Or
that's about it. I think it means, like, drink all day.
By 1997, Korn was co-headlining Lollapalooza with Tool, introducing massive crowds to their heavy, genre-bending sound. But what came next would take everything to a new level. Follow the Leader hit in '98, and that's when Korn fully exploded. The album debuted at number 1 and immediately went multi-platinum, powered by hits like Got the Life and Freak on a Leash. Korn, once ignored by radio, was now all over MTV. The Freak on a Leash music video, known for its animated bullet and unique style, became a TRL favorite and also won a Grammy Award. Korn was now competing for airtime with Britney Spears and NSYNC, something no one could have imagined just a few years earlier.
And the electricity is in the air, and it's chilling everyone out. Today, welcome to Korn TV. What's fun is that it's something the music group and what we could find for the Will Smith, Mariah Carey, Rage Against the Machine, Dr. Dre, and Snoop. Now since it's Friday, we're going to dive right hard into this action. Korn is here.
Absurdly enough, the demand for Freak on a Leash got so insane that MTV had to retire it from the TRL countdown.
From the big day out, 99, Korn.
That same year, they started headlining arena
This makes me
tours
wanna
and
work
launched
on my
their
song,
own
Drum
traveling
City.
festival, the Family Values Tour, bringing Rammstein, Limp Bizkit, and Ice Cube on the road. They even popped up in mainstream pop culture. Korn guest starred as animated versions of themselves in a 1999 Halloween episode of South Park, a Scooby-Doo style parody that cemented how far into the American mainstream this once outsider band had infiltrated.
Korn Power Finalized!
Bands Fans influenced by Korn's sound and success were everywhere. Limp Bizkit, Slipknot, Deftones, Papa Roach, and countless others rode the wave of the new metal genre that Korn pioneered. Jonathan Davis, the bully kid from Bakersfield, had done the impossible. He had become the voice of a generation. But here's the thing, success didn't make his pain go away. If anything, it made it louder. And the next phase of his journey would be even darker.
I was on a path to death real quick. I was a raging drug addict, alcoholic, womanizer.
Behind the crowds and the spotlight, Jonathan Davis was in freefall. He was deep into meth, cocaine, and drinking heavily, often going through bottles of Jack Daniels like water. The recording process for Follow the Leader wasn't as much creative as it was chaotic. Fueled by speed and alcohol, Jonathan pushed himself to the edge. The studio basically turned into a drug den. Coke dust on the consoles, whiskey everywhere, and zero memory of how songs even got recorded. It was chaos, and Jonathan was barely holding on.
I actually turned a little bit schizophrenic for a while, because I can do that to you. Where you feel like, I was feeling like my food's gonna be people trying to poison me. It was really tough time.
But during the 1998 Family Values Tour, he made a decision that probably saved his life.
So I stopped dead when we started touring because I couldn't function. There's no way I could be up for 2 days to tour and keep it together. I had to stop. So the day we took off on tour, our first tour with House Painted Biohazard, we got in our trailer and we built bunks and I just went in that bunk and I slept for 5 fucking days. Got to play the show, and that's when I kicked it.
At 28 years old, on top of the world but rotting inside, he finally chose to stop. Jonathan never used meth again, but alcohol became a growing problem.
It was impossible. I couldn't do meth and fuck a tour. It wouldn't work. So I started drinking, and then I became a raging alcoholic. And cocaine occasionally when I couldn't find it, but yeah, they go hand in hand.
Later that year, after the death of his grandfather, Jonathan spiraled. Anxiety, panic attacks, depression, it all hit at once. While Follow the Leader was still topping the charts, Jonathan was put on suicide watch, monitored 24/7.
Depression came back, anxiety came back, and that's when I started to get on meds to help me out instantly. But I'd always have to deal with it.
That's the duality. Korn was on top of the world, but Jonathan was coming undone.
It happens when you're depressed or you're going through mental health issues. You like try to self-medicate. Everyone I know that's really hurting inside usually becomes an alcoholic or a drug addict, and that's because they're trying to hide things that are going on that you can do. The best thing you can do is try to go get some help, talk to someone. You know, no medication that'll help. There's medications that will help. There's medications that make it worse. It's crapshoot. It's hard. It really is.
Jonathan turned to therapy, and the band kept moving.
I went to this therapy called EMDR therapy, where I watched this like Night Rider line back and forth. So then I had post-traumatic stress disorder from working at the coroner's office, and I had horrible nightmares and shit. And the doctors explained to me that sometimes your brain, when you experience traumas or depression, that your brain can't properly store that away, so it keeps coming back to fucking haunt you in your dreams and your thoughts. And so I did that therapy, and it really helped a lot. So for the people, asked the doctors if they could help. That therapy really helped me. It helped me a lot.
Issues dropped in 1999, another widely acclaimed masterpiece.
It's called Issues because all of us have issues, I guess, and this album's just the story of the issues I had going on due to the tours and everything.
God fucking damn it.
For it. It just sums it up, basically, because everybody has them, so you can relate.
This is one of those albums that you can listen to from start to finish with no bad songs, and I think it even rivals their debut album, as well as Follow the Leader, for being the best in their discography.
Well, this is my favorite. This is for sure my favorite one. For sure my favorite one. Around this time, Jonathan married his high school sweetheart, Renee Perez. They'd already had a kid, Nathan, born in 95, but the relationship didn't last. By 2000, the marriage had ended. Jonathan rarely speaks about it, but the picture is clear. Porn was exploding, the pressure was unsustainable, and his personal life was crumbling under the weight. Fame didn't bring him peace. Perhaps it made things worse, and Jonathan wasn't the only one struggling.
After the album Issues, Corn Issues, that's when my ex-wife left. And right then, I became a single father. I got full custody. And right then, my heart was no longer in porn as much because it was at home with my kid. I was trying to juggle her, and instead of I was trying to figure out all these ways to raise her while still being in the band, you know, hiring nannies, and then the nannies would freak out, I'd have to hire another nanny, and
damn it.
And it wasn't working, man, and instead of making the choice, I dove deeper into partying, you know, just to forget about it.
Untouchables followed in 2002. Massive budget, massive sound, mixed reviews. The songs aren't as catchy as some of their other stuff, which turns some people off. But everyone in the band is firing on all cylinders, performing at their peak.
That record was when I became a real singer.
Jesus fucking Christ.
All the effort, all the stuff we put in that record for 2 years, we worked
Jesus
hard on it. It was
fucking goddamn Christ.
Incredible production, just the best of everything. That's my favorite one, hands down.
We spent 2 years making that goddamn Christ. Jesus fucking Christ.
In 2003 came Take a Look in the Mirror, heavier and angrier than their previous works, arguably their heaviest album. Surely a nice banger when you're mad at something.
Rematch me, cunt.
In October 2004, Jonathan married Devin Augustina Chouette, a former adult film actress who had moved into fashion design. They had 2 sons together, Zeppelin and Pirate.
I want to say Happy New Year to everybody. We have some things we want to talk about. Number 1, we hope y'all have an amazing New Year, and what else?
We're actually going to tell all of you, everybody that paid full price, we did too. And thank you so very much. So what we decided to do was to take...
But as the years passed, the marriage began to fall apart. Devin faced serious mental health.
Decided to do was to. And thank you so very much. So what we decided to do was to take...
But as the years passed, the marriage began to fall apart. Devin faced serious mental health challenges and struggled with addiction. We don't know much about it, and frankly, we don't need to. However, it is public knowledge that things got so bad that in 2016, Jonathan filed for divorce and sought a restraining order to protect their kids. It's a sad chapter that, as we'll see later, will end tragically.
What? Are we done?
Yeah, because these people need to get out there and
Get
go
out.
have fun,
Hold on,
but
it's
make
New Year's.
sure. Uber.
Yeah, don't drive drunk, be safe, don't be dipshits. I hate dipshits.
Hey, get out of your car, park it, walk.
See You on the Other Side in 2005 marked a shift. It was their first album without Head, who had quit the band to find some sense of normalcy in his life.
It was, I would just say that the methamphetamine habit and me being away from my daughter was just too much, man. I couldn't live like that anymore. I couldn't be away from my kid. I was a single father trying to hire nannies, and it was just a bunch of things, you know, at once. So,
despite a divided fan base, the album went platinum. Meanwhile, Jonathan was grinding through panic attacks and insomnia until in 2006 on a European tour he suddenly collapsed. His body was bizarrely covered in bruises. Doctors told him his blood platelets had crashed. The diagnosis was ITP, a rare disorder where your immune system eats your own platelets.
Immune thrombocytopenia, or ITP, is an autoimmune disease. where your own body actually attacks your platelets, and therefore your blood can't clot, and it can lead to a lot of bleeding issues.
One wrong move on stage and he could have bled into his brain and died. Korn had to cancel the rest of the tour, and Jonathan spent weeks recovering in a London hospital. He came back shaken but alive, and more committed than ever. Coincidentally, around the same time, David Silveria, Korn's original drummer, stepped away from the band.
Hopefully we'll be back and we'll be rocking again.
Officially, it was called a break. Unofficially, things were unraveling. Years of aggressive drumming had wrecked his lower back, leaving him in chronic pain.
Started really tired of playing.
Jesus goddamn fucking goddamn fucking goddamn Christ, goddamn it.
It's like it's a freak thing,
Jesus
so
goddamn
I just tell everyone, you know what, I can't play anymore. It's like a big, I don't know what I'm gonna do.
It was actually a few years that went by before I actually had my back repaired. But I was in so much pain, I couldn't even do anything. And I went to a doctor, and I was misdiagnosed by an x-ray of the bones. And that went on for years before I went to a specialist, because it got so bad I couldn't even walk more than 10 feet without sitting down. And I went to another specialist, and he held up my first x-ray and then the new x-ray, and he said he could see from across the room with the first x-ray, my back was broken in 4 spots. So my inability to actually stand up, let alone walk or play or anything, it took a few months before I could actually even do any of those things. And once I could, I was never out of pain. It was killing me all the time. It was unbearable. It was ridiculous.
Add to that the emotional burnout, the touring grind, and growing tension with the rest of the band. It was only a matter of time.
When we started out, we were all equal members, and everything was supposed to be voted on, and everyone had equal say and everything. And that slowly turned into a different way of things working that I totally 100% disagreed with.
He bowed out and Korn moved on without it. Later, David would claim he was never truly asked back, and whenever asked, he threw punches in interviews, saying Korn had lost its soul. The band, for their part, made it clear the door was closed, and according to most fans, Korn would never be the same again. The untitled album that came out in 2007, the first one without David, was widely slammed. Even Jonathan later called it soulless. Then came Korn 3, Remember Who You Are, in 2010, a back-to-basics attempt with producer Ross Robinson. Some fans loved the rawness, while others didn't even care about Korn anymore. The new metal era was long gone, and most bands from that era had already been forgotten, and Korn was fighting to stay relevant. So they pulled a bizarre move. In 2011, they dropped Path to Totality, a full-on dubstep metal hybrid featuring producers like Skrillex and Noisia. Ed came back into the band, which felt miraculous, and his return seemed to give the band renewed clarity and a stronger sense of direction.
And everything fell into place, you know, and so the door opened, and I'm back in Korn.
You can kiss that goddamn
bitch. I didn't mean no before him, and not yet, because he had stuff to work in me, and there's a time to leave, and a time to come back, a time to follow him to crazy places, and a time to follow him back to other crazy places. So that's why I'm back with Korn right now, and a lot of people are kind of, a lot of Christians are like confused about that and everything, but God's heart beats for everybody.
It was one of the most exciting times to be a Korn fan. However, the album itself ranges from mediocre to good. Love and Meth and Never Never stand among Korn's finest work, layered, powerful, and memorable. But by contrast, tracks like It's All Wrong felt undercooked. It's an album that unfortunately never reached its full potential. For some, it was a desperate attempt to ride the dubstep hype of the time. For others, it was genius. Either way, the album debuted at number 10 and won awards. Proof that Korn wasn't done yet, and neither were Jonathan's demons. In 2013, he checked into rehab for Xanax addiction. What started as medication for anxiety had turned into dependency. Eventually he kicked it, but still smoked weed daily until 2015, just to keep his nerves in check. Truth is, at this point, Jonathan wasn't even chasing any high, he was just trying to feel normal.
God damn it. God damn it.
By 2016, Korn had dropped The Serenity of Suffering, an album that was widely received as a much welcome return to form.
And Jonathan, though, he had to kind of fall in love with heavy music again because he went his own way with electronics and stuff. And so, with me and Monkey back, it was just like, we really need to be guitar focused. And you can't put us back together and just have a little bit of guitar. Like, we need to be
Christ, I didn't want to do that fucking shit.
firing on all cylinders.
Goddamn goddamn
Critics loved it. Metal Hammer called it their most visceral years, and Loudwire named it one of the best metal albums of the year. Songs like Rotting in Vain and A Different World featuring Corey Taylor sounded like classic Korn, but with a precision that only comes after decades in the game. It debuted at number 4 on Billboard. 20 years in, most bands are just selling reunion tickets, while fucking Korn was still dropping bodies. Watching Jonathan Davis on stage, you'd think everything was perfect. Same kill, same roar, same possessed energy. But backstage, his life was still a shit show. He was in the middle of a brutal divorce with Devin, fighting for custody and trying to raise kids while dealing with someone who was losing the fight to addiction.
Goddamn.
He's so nice. The guy's so sweet, and he lets people kind of walk over him. Even to this day, yeah. He puts up a lot. If he loves someone, they can they can do damage on him, and he'll just be, he'll stick it out, and he'll believe the best and everything.
In 2018, Jonathan Davis faced 2 devastating losses. In February, his mother, Holly, passed away. She had been a rare source of stability in a life marked by chaos, and her absence left a deep, bottomless void. Then, in August, came an even messier tragedy. His estranged wife, Devin, died from an overdose caused by heroin and prescription medication. Devin's struggles with addiction and mental illness had been ongoing for years. Although Jonathan had supported her through multiple attempts at recovery, progress was always temporary. Over time, addiction altered her personality, making her unpredictable and unsafe for herself and, tragically, for their children.
Now fuck up and move that bitch
Which
right
is
here.
why in 2016, Jonathan was granted a restraining order against her. Still, when the news came that Devin was gone, all that drama for their children. Which is why in 2006, over time, addiction altered her personality and supported her through illness and
I gotta touch her head.
Although Jonathan had supported her through multiple attempts at recovery, progress was always temporary. Over time, addiction altered her personality, making her unpredictable and unsafe for herself and, tragically, for their children. Which is why in 2016, Jonathan was granted a restraining order against her. Still, when the news came that Devin was gone, all that drama, all the fights, the court orders, the anger, all of that fell away. I loved her with all of my being, he wrote in a vulnerable Instagram post days later. He asked fans not to judge her, saying she was an amazing mother and wife when she was sober, but that she'd been very, very sick in the end.
God,
addiction isn't about being good or bad. It's an illness, one that keeps taking until there's nothing left to take. For Jonathan, that meant grieving twice. First for the woman he'd lost to drugs years earlier, and then for the woman whose heart finally stopped. That same year,
hell no, I'm gonna kick your fucking ass.
Long-awaited solo album, Black Labyrinth. Unlike Korn's heavier catalog, this album embraced slower tempos, experimental structures, and global musical influences. It reflected a period of intense introspection shaped by the personal darkness he had been living through. It wasn't built to dominate the charts. It was too intimate for that.
And I just finished doing some vocals and stuff on some stuff a couple weeks ago. So it's been a long process, but it turned out great. I'm so happy.
Are you surprised by everybody's reaction? Were you worried about how we would take it?
Yeah, of course. I don't know if people will dig it, but...
Hello. Today we embark on a journey into one of history's most enigmatic natural events, the Tunguska explosion. In 1908, something so massive occurred in the depths of Siberia that its effects were felt across continents. Yet the true mystery lies not just in its force, but in the unanswered questions it left behind. It was June 30th, 1908. For the people living near the Podkamenaya Tunguska River in central Siberia, the day began like any other. A clear sky, the warm touch of summer, and nothing seemed out of place. But around 7 a.m., something strange appeared in the sky. A blazing fireball racing from east to west. It seemed to fall toward the earth. The sky turned brighter than day. Moments later, the ground began to shake. It was as if a colossal force rose from beneath the earth. Trees swayed violently, windows shattered, and people in distant villages lost their balance. In a matter of seconds, the explosion struck. A thunderous roar, far louder than any storm, shook everything. The sound was heard from over 1,000 kilometers away. Farmers living 60 kilometers from the explosion center reported seeing a giant blue-white column of light rising into the sky. It was so bright, they had to shield their eyes. Within seconds, the shockwave spread. Trees collapsed as if crushed by an invisible hand. The taiga forest was flattened like blades of grass. Locals had no idea what had happened. Some spoke of the wrath of gods, others of the end of the world. Fear gripped the entire region. The nearby Evenki people believed a fiery spirit had fallen from the sky and destroyed the forest. To them, it was a supernatural event. But it took scientists 19 years to reach the area. In 1927, geologist Leonid Kulik led the first expedition into the mystery zone. As Kulik walked among the scorched trees, he realized he was nearing the center. The trees lay outward, as if blasted away from a single point. But something was missing. No crater, no meteor fragments. It was as if a ghost from the sky had done this. Kulik's team searched among the mud and charred tree roots for clues, but there were none. The source of the explosion remained invisible. Around 80 million trees had been leveled. It was the largest natural explosion ever recorded, yet it left behind no trace. Scientists began developing theories to explain the blast. Was it a meteor, a comet, or something else that exploded in the atmosphere? Some researchers proposed that a meteoroid exploded in the atmosphere before hitting the ground, an airburst that caused all the destruction. But why did this explosion leave behind no meteorite pieces, scientists were baffled. Tunguska was full of secrets. After the 1927 expedition, the Tunguska event began drawing global attention. Was it merely a natural phenomenon? Particles from the blast reached the atmosphere and lit up night skies across Europe, a sign of something truly extraordinary. For the first 20 years, only legend spoke of Tunguska. Science was just beginning to chase the truth. When the first expedition to Tunguska concluded, the magnitude of the event shook the scientific world. This wasn't just a local incident. It was a cosmic catastrophe etched into Earth's history. Scientists suspected something had exploded in the atmosphere, but such a powerful detonation, leaving no physical remains, was incredibly strange. One theory proposed that a comet entered Earth's atmosphere and exploded mid-air, composed mostly of ice and gas, leaving no trace behind. Other scientists argued it was a meteoroid that disintegrated in the atmosphere, but still, why were there no fragments? During his exploration, Kulik also listened to local testimonies. Some claimed to have seen blue lights dancing in the sky before the explosion. What caused these mysterious lights in the sky? Some scientists believed they were caused by ionized air reacting to the explosion. In the days after the explosion, the night skies across Europe were so bright that people could read newspapers outdoors. It was abnormal. This phenomenon was thought to be caused by particles suspended in the atmosphere reflecting sunlight. But what were these particles? Kulik's expeditions were supported by the Soviets, but the journey was harsh. The terrain was difficult, the weather brutal, and resources scarce. At ground zero, there was one tree still standing. Everything around it had been destroyed. That tree became a symbol of the mystery. At the epicenter, the ground was glass-like, melted from intense heat. But what had generated such extreme temperatures? Some radical theories suggested that a small black hole may have collided with Earth. It was an extraordinary hypothesis. According to the theory, the black hole would have pierced the Earth and exited elsewhere. But no exit point was ever found. Another wild theory proposed that the explosion was caused by a crashing alien spacecraft. Was it an accident or intentional? This idea first surfaced in the 1940s. Since then, it has inspired many conspiracy theories. But there was no evidence the black hole may have collided with Earth. At the epicenter, the ground was glass-like, melted from intense heat. But what had generated such extreme temperatures? Some radical theories suggested that a small black hole may have collided with Earth. It was an extraordinary hypothesis. According to the theory, the black hole would have pierced the Earth and exited elsewhere. But no exit point was ever found. Another wild theory proposed that the explosion was caused by a crashing alien spacecraft. Was it an accident or intentional? This idea first surfaced in the 1940s. Since then, it has inspired many conspiracy theories. But there was no evidence. The scientific community kept its distance from theories lacking evidence. But among the public, these stories spread like wildfire. Kulik believed the explosion had unnatural origin, but the data kept leading him to more questions. By the 1930s, Tunguska was still unsolved, yet every new investigation only revealed deeper layers of mystery. Science needed more data, but the Soviet Union shifted its focus to war and development. Research came to a halt once again. The mystery of Tunguska fell back into silence, but this was only the beginning. The Tunguska explosion hadn't just flattened trees, it altered the chemical structure of the soil. Scientists discovered elements not normally found in the area. In the blast zone, traces of nickel, iridium, and certain radioactive isotopes were found. Could these be remnants of a cosmic object? Tree rings in the area showed accelerated growth in the years after the explosion. This was highly unusual. Some researchers believed minerals released by the explosion enriched the soil. Others pointed to signs of mutation. Genetic abnormalities were observed in local wildlife, especially insects and microorganisms. It was deeply concerning. Kulik's team also found animal bones, but what they belonged to remained unclear. Some were completely charred. Reports indicated a sharp decline in bird and insect populations after the blast. The ecosystem had been disrupted. For years, a smoky, mist-like atmosphere lingered over the region. Could it be caused by gases released during the explosion? Geologically, underground layers showed signs of disruption. Seismic waves from the blast were recorded as far as 1,000 kilometers away. These tremors were recorded by observatories even back then, but no one could make sense of the data for years. Scientists attempted to measure the electromagnetic energy emitted by the blast, but the technology in 1908 was simply not enough. Modern analyses estimate the blast released between 5 to 15 megatons of energy, several times stronger than a large nuclear bomb. Magnetic anomalies are still observed in the area. Compasses go haywire as they near the blast center. These magnetic anomalies support the idea of a cosmic origin. What if a true space object really did explode here? Even today, the blast zone is studied like a living laboratory, both biologically and geologically unique. Underground water sources also showed signs of change. Water levels became erratic, and some regions had altered chemical compositions. All of this proved that the explosion's effects lasted for decades. It wasn't just a moment of destruction, it sparked long-term transformation. Some scientists consider Tunguska to be the largest uncontrolled energy release on Earth in recorded history. But what was the source of such massive energy? Even today, no one knows for sure, and that's what makes Tunguska unique. The traces of the Tunguska explosion remain in the soil, in the skies, and even in the DNA of living things. Science's work is far from done. Kulik's expedition ended with a strange absence. No crater, no meteorite fragments. It defied every expectation. Trees closest to ground zero were still standing, scorched on the outside, but hollow and charred within. This strange pattern was seen as evidence of an airburst, an explosion in the atmosphere before hitting the ground. Some researchers claim the explosion didn't start at Tunguska, but much higher in the atmosphere, a far more complex scenario. Kulik's findings sparked international curiosity, but in the Soviet Union, information was tightly controlled. Scientists began calculating the energy released, and the numbers were staggering, over 1,000 times more powerful than Hiroshima. But how could such a massive explosion leave no trace? It challenged the very limits of scientific reasoning. Alternative theories emerged. Some even speculated it was a nuclear-like detonation, decades before the first atomic bomb. Some claims went further, suggesting the explosion was caused by an alien spacecraft crashing to Earth. Tunguska had become a mythic event. Caught between scientific inquiry and folklore, Tunguska became ever more shrouded in mystery with each passing year. Research within the Soviet Union remained limited, but scientists in the West began seeking new ways to solve the Tunguska mystery. In the 1950s, some geologists proposed the blast might have come from deep within the Earth's layers, but there was no proof. The Tunguska site remained extremely difficult to access, making research slow and challenging. For those seeking to understand Tunguska, there were only observations, assumptions, and theories. The truth remained hidden in shadow. But as time passed, technology evolved. Satellite imagery and computer models opened the door to new questions. New analyses showed the explosion occurred 5 to 10 kilometers above the ground, very different from typical meteor impacts. But one question still lingered. What exactly exploded? Was it an icy comet or a metallic asteroid? Scientists began to favor the theory of an icy body exploding in the atmosphere. That could explain the lack of debris. This theory aligned with many observations, yet the mystery of Tunguska remained unsolved. Every answer raised new questions. Tunguska had become more than a natural event. It now symbolized humanity's helplessness in the face of the unknown. Scientific explanations didn't satisfy the public. Alternative theories began to spread, some of them wildly outlandish. One of the most striking theories suggested a UFO crash. An alien spacecraft had supposedly obliterated the Tunguska forest. Supporters of this theory argued that the absence of a crater proved the event was extraterrestrial in origin. Some eyewitnesses claimed they saw a silver disk moving in the sky. It was the beginning of decades of controversy. Another theory blamed the event on a failed experiment by Nikola Tesla. It was said he attempted to transmit energy across the world using his Wardenclyffe Tower. Tesla was rumored to have tried controlling the forces of nature. If true, it might have been the greatest man-made disaster in history. Another claim connected the explosion to a supernatural being. Some believed it was the wrath of a sky god. Folk legends spoke of forest spirits awakened by the blast. The explosion was seen as a rupture in the supernatural balance. During the Soviet era, some documents suggested the event may have involved secret weapons testing, but these claims were never verified. The Tunguska mystery also found its way into pop culture. Books, comics, and movies portrayed it in fantastic and fictional ways. Some claimed that fake scientific reports were fabricated after the event. The truth, they said, was deliberately hidden from the public. According to some, the Soviet KGB silenced those who knew the truth. Yet no definitive evidence ever surfaced. Another belief was that the Tunguska event was part of an alien message, perhaps even a warning. Some suggested beings from another dimension crossed over that day. Could space-time itself have been torn open? In modern times, cults have emerged based on these claims. Some interpreted the explosion as a divine message. The Tunguska explosion became a symbol for conspiracy theorists and pseudoscience. Everyone had their own version of the truth. Some believe the blast site retained traces of a parallel universe. The forest's energy felt strange, and nature behaved abnormally. Although scientists dismissed these claims, public fascination never waned. The mystery only made it more alluring. Tunguska had become more than just an event. It was a legend, a curiosity, even a tourist destination. Hundreds visited the site each year. But the truth still lay buried deep within the earth. What really happened? Science had advanced, but the answers remained elusive. For decades, scientists tried to understand what